All right, hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome into the Rise and Grind Morning Show. We got news and notes over the weekend, man. A lot of insider news and notes. We're going to be talking about free agency, Kirby Joseph, Twentyman's breakdown, all of it coming up next.
That is a big-time stop by that defense.
All right. Hey, welcome in, everybody. It's the Rise and Grind Morning Show, and I want to welcome you all in here on this Monday morning, man. We are cruising to April, man. I feel the weather outside is delightful. And no, we're not talking about snowmen and snow anymore. It's beautiful down here in Southwest Michigan. Glad you could all join here on the Rise and Grind Morning Show. I am dealing with some audio things over the weekend. Some things that happened. That's why I didn't get any content out until I got one out last night. So I'm dealing with it the best I can. I'm not sure what happened. But typically, we've had multiple updates. And anytime that happens, things get a little screwy. So if you have any audio issues this morning from me, just let me know in the chat. That way I at least can recognize and go figure out what the heck's going on. But I think we'll be okay. It's just not the same tone that I normally have. So something's changed. But anyway, a lot of stuff to kind of go over today. I'm not sure how long I'll be on. When I say a lot, it's kind of, there's a few things that are kind of lengthy. I do want to get into Twentyman's breakdown on free agency so far. I passed around the Twentyman breakdown on the Believe Network with Glover Quinn, and it was extremely good. You know, I'm glad to hear that Twentyman and I see eye to eye. Like, you know, I don't always agree with everybody. You guys know that. But to hear what Twentyman said, I have to say that was probably recorded maybe five days ago or so. If you kind of take what they talked about and some of the players' names that kind of came out. I think Wanham must have been signed after that, if I remember correctly. But I'm going to play it this morning. I don't think I'll have an issue with the Believe Network doing a copyright. If I do, which I shouldn't, I'll just reach out to them and make sure we're on the same page. But anyway, I should be okay. If not, you guys will just let me know in the chat, and then I'll just call and we'll deal with it another day. I do want to get into the 2-minute drill today. We'll go through those. There's some good ones in there. Some pretty funny stuff. We're going to talk about Kirby Joseph this morning. And look, I'm not trying to be a jerk about Kirby and some things that were said and written about Kirby, but I'm all about transparency. So some of the things that we're going to talk about are going to implicate others, and it is what it is. So I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just trying to set the record straight. There's a reason why we have conversations the way that we do. There's a reason why I do research the way that I do. And I think it's all about having the right knowledge, the right information, so you understand as a fan that, this is what's really going on. Let's not, and I don't think people that put information out did it intentionally. I really don't. I think that it was just a mistake. But it is what it is. So we'll talk about that. If you guys didn't watch the 2-minute drills yet, we'll probably start with Greg Dortch. And so I want to ask a question. I want to see how many of you actually pay attention to the things that I say. Yeah, man, my ears are just, they just seem muffled. Like my tone seems muffled. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. And we'll see if you guys paid attention. About a month ago, I did a breakdown on, it was either Kyle Pitts or Kenan Sadiq. I think it was Kyle Pitts. I wrote up a play. Matter of fact, I printed it, I published it, on the DetroitFootballJournal.com, which if you haven't subscribed, you better hurry up because the end of the month, we're changing the gig. So you got 6 months free. We had a lot of subscribers this weekend. I'll get you guys taken care of tonight so that you get your 6 months comp. But it all ends at the end of this month. And then we'll either be switching to something different or new or better or whatever. So I created a play and it's published. So it's there. My question to you is, what was the name of the play that I drew up, that I created in talking about how, the next great tight end to be added to this roster, if it was Kyle Pitts, what that would do, right? What that would do for our offense. Does anybody remember the name of the play? And if you can put it into the chat, the first person to put it into the chat within the next, let's do this. I got all my things refigured now. Let's get you set up with some Jeopardy. If you can get into the chat by the time this song is done, someone's going to get a gift. I don't think anyone's going to get it. And I don't see it. Oh, you guys failed. All right, I created a play, and now you're going to have to wait until you hear from Greg Dortch because his nickname is the name of my play. So how funny is that? Like the linkage here between what the Lions signed for a free agent and the name of my play a month before we even knew this guy was coming to the team. I don't know, man. Things work in mysterious ways. But call it a conspiracy if you want. I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't even know they were looking at Dortch. And it was definitely not called Omaha. That's Peyton Manning for you. Anyway, all right, let's do this. Let's do Tim Twentyman first. And then we'll just rip off the old Band-Aid with Kirby. Definitely wasn't Taz or Tasmanian, but you guys are too late now. You can have fun with it in the chat, but we'll get to it here in about 15, 20 minutes or so, and then you'll know for sure. All right, so Tim Twentyman, man, he wrote this article up on the 21st of March, and 7 a.m. He was talking about it was a recap, breaking down the Lions free agency signing so far, which I've been public about this, man. I 100% support what Brad Holmes is doing right now. He has this team, this roster set up in such good fashion. The depth is there. The core is there. And I'm going to pivot already, but here it is. Just because we didn't get big names, right? The Lions didn't go out and sign these big names. And just because the Lions didn't go out and sign these giant contracts, which would be stupid, doesn't mean that they don't have a winning team. It doesn't mean that they don't have a competitive roster. I think what a lot of fans are forgetting, and if you're a casual fan, if you're if you like to call yourself a super fan, I don't. I think that's just, I don't see the point, man. I've been supporting this team my whole life, season tickets for 28 years, and like if there's not anything super about that, then I don't know what wouldn't be. But just because the Lions didn't go out and do all that, then maybe you're forgetting something, right? Because go back to 23, and I know I've said this before, but if you go back to 2023, what is the reason why the Lions made it to the NFC Championship game? What is the main reason? And I think a lot of you know, or maybe you don't, but it had nothing to do with free agency. It was how Brad drafted 4 absolute studs at the beginning of that draft. I could care less what happened with the remaining draft picks in that draft. Could care less. Because he did way more than any other GM did in 2023 that did not take a quarterback. Brad Holmes brought in 4 All-Pro, Pro Bowl players in his first 4 picks. I don't care about Hendon Hooker. I don't care about Broderick Martin. I don't care. I don't care about Giovanni Manu. People saying that it was a bad pick. It wasn't. He's a backup. I don't understand like where people think every draft pick is supposed to be a home run or every draft pick is supposed to start. That's just not reality. It's just not. It is the most god-awful takes I have ever heard in my life. But hey, a stupid is, a stupid does, and if you like to listen to stupidity, then this isn't the right channel for you. So we go to the championship game, have an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl within 3 seasons of gutting an entire roster because of how Brad Holmes drafted. And what I'm saying, it didn't matter about free agency because it wasn't free agency that really put us over the edge. It was free agency that gave us the depth that we needed to have good quality veterans and guys that could come in and step in and sub packages to continue, when you have to pull the starters out for a moment, continue doing what they're doing. Or if you have injuries, it can continue, right? Let's keep the standard. That's all free agency is supposed to really be for. Unless you have glaring holes on your roster that you're really trying to fill. And then even then, you have to weigh the draft. Like, what does the draft look like? And so this season, when you look at this draft, I think you look at 3 key pieces. You look at how deep it is at edge. Why would you waste 30, 40 million on another guy or even 15, 20 million on another guy? Hell, even 10 million on another guy. When this draft is loaded with edge into the 4th round. Edge that could end up being really great rotational guys into the 4th round. They can play right now. Now, they may have higher ceilings, lower floors, but that doesn't mean that they can't come in and contribute. And as a matter of fact, we need guys that can stop the run, not get after the quarterback. Like, you'll get to the quarterback at some point. You have to shut the run down to even have a chance to beat these teams in the NFL. If you can't shut the run down, you can forget it. Like, then you're wide open. If you think that getting after the passer is the only thing, great, they just hand the ball off and they got to run on you. Because if you want to overcommit and just rush, blitz, what's going to happen? Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. The Washington playoff game is going to happen. That's exactly what happens when you rush the passer. when you don't have the run game bottled up. It's exactly what happens. I'm not wrong. Go watch the tape. Okay? So the reason why the Lions made it in 2023 is because of the drafting. So here we are in 26. Why are the Lions going to get back and beyond where they have ever been? Because of the way that Brad is drafted from 2021 through 2025. That's why. People are complaining about Tyleik Williams and losing DJ Reader. Like, hello? Did y'all not realize that DJ Reader was never going to be into the plan this year? I mean, I think I kind of told everybody that last year, that this season we'll most likely lose DJ Reader. And if he does come back, it'll be after probably the draft, when we see what Brad is able to do or not able to do, if he's able to grab another, nose tackle type, defensive tackle, a bigger guy. But that's the reason why they drafted Tyleik Williams. And that's been the plan since day one. You don't go out and draft a guy that's 330 pounds to play defensive tackle, 326, and not replace the older DJ Reader, who's 32 years old. Like, of course that was the plan. The difference is Tyleik moves different. He moves way different for a guy that big. Yeah, if he were to drop 15, 20 pounds, well, he's now a pass rushing defensive tackle. And he can still get after the passer, without a doubt. But he's going to be your double team guy that's going to allow the linebackers to get clean, right? Stay clean and get through that offensive line. That's what those guys are for. They're double team eaters, man. They're gap responsible, gap and a half responsible, depending on which way Shep plays it this year. I assume that we're still keeping that same principle. But that's the replacement. And Tyleik Williams was an extremely good rookie defensive tackle. I mean, the dude is batting passes down left and right. I don't care if he gets a sack. You're batting a pass down. You're getting a TFL in the run game. Those are just as good as a sack, if not better. And if you're freeing up guys like Jack Campbell, to get through that offensive line to get a sack, if you're freeing up guys like Alex Anzalone, or this year, Damone Clark or whomever, right, or DJ Wonnum, then yeah, he's doing his job. So the reason why free agency may not be as, I guess just roses and rainbows for everybody out there that wants these big names and big contracts. Newsflash, it was never going to happen. It wasn't even possible. It's never been possible. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is possible in previous seasons, but it was never going to be possible this year when you have multiple guys on max contracts. And I'm glad that Tim Twentyman asked the question to Glover Quinn, right? And he asked him the question. We'll listen to it in a little bit here. He said, tell me, how many teams out there have two high-paid edge rushers on the same team? And Glover Quinn said, none. That's your former all-pro safety, Glover Quinn, understanding that the responsibility by Brad Holmes has been followed through. Like, that would just be wasteful spending, because if you ignore all of the other positions because you spent all that money on one position, that would be irresponsible. It'd be idiotic. You don't need, and besides that point, I think that there's a schematic thing that a lot of people are missing, which I started writing something. Hopefully I'll get it released in the next couple of days. There's a schematic thing that some people are missing here. And that is, in a 4-3 base front defense that we run, you do not have typically two Aidens or an Aiden and then another speed guy, and that's it. That's not how that defense works. The defense has always been set up to have your strong side defensive end run stuffer that does have pass rush upside, and then you have your weak side defensive end pass rusher in Aiden Hutchinson. Open up Football for Dummies. I don't know what you got to do, or listen more often to this channel, because it's all about education here, man. It's all about learning. I'm learning with you, and I'm trying to pass the things on that I learned to you. And hopefully it sparks good conversation, and hopefully we're all better for it. But that's what a lot of people are missing right now. It doesn't mean that you can't have a speed guy over there. It doesn't mean that you can't bring in a speed guy on third down. But it usually means that they're going to follow with what the principle is of that defense. And that is strong side, defensive end, run, stuffer, weak side, pass rusher, and like Aiden Hutchinson. And then if you also notice last season, what did the Lions start doing more often? They started putting Aiden up a little bit more in the 2-point stance. They also started to get their linebackers more involved, which I said from the outset of training camp. When I seen that, I felt confident that the Lions were going to be utilizing a wider approach at getting after the quarterback. It wasn't just going to rely on only Aiden. And matter of fact, some of the plays last season where Aiden is not rushing the quarterback were some of the most effective plays the Lions ran because he stayed home and they launched somebody from somewhere else. Last year, the Seattle Seahawks did not win because they had one or two guys getting after the quarterback or getting after the ball carrier. No, they won by pass rush by committee, which is something I tried to teach y'all a couple years ago. And I've always pounded the chest for it. It's never about one or two guys. You need a committee of guys that can get after the quarterback. And I know that there's some idiot out there that thinks he invented that phrase. No. That pass rush by committee has been around for decades. Decades. It's a teachable style of football. It's been around since I played. You want multiple guys from multiple areas, and your goal is to get a free rusher. If you can create the free rusher like Minnesota does extremely well, you're going to have a lot of success. And Seattle had a lot of success. So, anyway, I got off on a whole tangent there because this stuff, it gets to me after a minute. Just people either they get locked in to what, a few people are saying, and then they get loud with it, and then they spread it like wildfire. And before you know it, you got a fan base that is completely uneducated about the facts. And then they run with it. And then the team is going to go win. And then they're going to start celebrating. But you know what didn't change? Free agency didn't change. The players on the field didn't change, except for the ones we're about to draft. The philosophy didn't change. Nothing changed. So if we can go win a lot of football games, which I think we've won a lot of football games over the last 4 seasons, tell me how that other philosophy that one or two or three people want to continually dump down your throats, tell me how that's helped us, because it hasn't. We haven't used it. We haven't needed it. Hell, we won 15 games without it. We won 13 games without it. We won 12 games without it. All right? We've won 9 games without it. Twice. Just saying. Let's get back to Tim Twentyman here. Right after this.
Pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down again.
All right. Let's get into 10-20 minutes. So he says, after finishing 9-8 last season and missing the playoffs, which that's another point of contention. A lot of fans believe that we have digressed. We have kind of wound back, if you will. And I read it this morning at like 4:30 this morning. I'm just going through random, comments on other channels, and man, I went hard on some of them. But the Lions didn't really regress. I said digress is a bad word. Regress. It's, the injuries obviously were a problem, but they kept mentioning the name Howie Roseman. Give me Howie Roseman over Brad Holmes. Okay. Howie just had to sell his team for the most part because he can't afford to pay all the guys that they brought in. Right? So how's that helping them? Did they make it back to the Super Bowl last year? Nope. Howie didn't win a Super Bowl till his 8th season. Howie also missed the playoffs 4 years in a row. Howie never won more than a wild card game before he won the Super Bowl. I think I'll stick with Brad because he's been way more successful than Howie Roseman was through his first 5 seasons. It is what it is. The proof is out there. I've shared it with you guys multiple times. So, Lions coming off, back-to-back NFC North Division titles, 23-24. It's an important offseason for the Lions to add talent and depth to the roster to support a good core of young stars that hope to lead Detroit back to the playoffs here in 2026. Reading Tim Twentyman's highlight here on DetroitLions.com. Goes in to say that injuries were a factor in Detroit missing the playoffs last season, much like they were in the Lions' early playoff exit after a 15-2 regular season in 2024. Well, it's about time that somebody else is saying this other than me.
That is a big-time stop by that defense.
So he goes on to say that that's why continuing to build depth is so important. Lions general manager Brad Holmes likes the young nucleus on this roster and will continue to look to add pieces around that young core in the next wave of free agency and in next month's NFL draft. Quote by Brad Holmes says, "I don't think that we're that far off. I personally don't. We have a lot of good players. We have a lot of good young ascending players. We have a really good quarterback. We have the right coach. I do think that we are very close." I would agree. He goes on to say, quote, "We'll be looking at everything. But I do not think that this is a deep surgery overhaul. I do not think that. But obviously, there needs to be some adjustments made for sure." I would agree with that. So far in 2026, Brad Holmes has signed several players, including Cade Mays, tackle Larry Borum, running back Isaiah Pacheco, defensive back Christian Ezine, cornerback Roger McCreary, and tight end Tyler Conklin. You forgot DJ Wonham in here. And this was just a couple of days ago, so DJ Wonham was definitely signed. But anyway, it says Mays was one of the top centers on the free agent market this offseason and fills a big void up front in the center of Detroit's offensive line. Ezine and McCreary have 53 starts between them and have the versatility to play multiple positions in the secondary. Borum has starting experience at both tackle spots and gives Detroit depth at the position. Pacheco is a tough physical runner with 2 Super Bowl titles to his name. Holmes also has been busy re-signing players he already knows fit in Detroit and want to run it back in 2026 with cornerback Rock Yassin and linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez headlining that list. The following breakdown of Detroit's free agency so far. Free agency signings: Cade Mays. I won't go through it all. Larry Borum, Isaiah Pacheco, Christian Ezine, Roger McCreary, Tyler Conklin. And then he kind of gives a little breakdown of each. Edge, DJ Wonham. Now, Wonham is a 6-year vet who spent the last 2 seasons in Carolina. After breaking into the league in Minnesota in 2021, he recorded 31 quarterback pressures with 3 sacks last season, but has 2 seasons in 21 and 23 where he recorded 8 sacks. Wonham, 6'5", 258 pounds, is also a good run defender on the edge. I would say great run defender on the edge. And then you have wide receiver Greg Dortch. Dortch spent his last 5 seasons in Arizona. So new Lions offensive coordinator Drew Petzing certainly knows what he's getting in the veteran wide receiver. Also punt returner, kick returner, electric at both. If you are on Twitter, if you go to my Twitter at Will Rock Jr., I created a Greg Dortch greatest hits, cut it up the other day. It's pretty fun to watch. The guy has some unique movement, like really unique movement. And I think that's what separates these smaller guys is they have to be they have to have something about them that stands out, right? If you're small and you're quick, you're fast, and there's a difference between quick and fast. I think he's quick and then fast, but he has unique movement. He glides different, and Khalif Raymond does the same thing. So he also mentions linebacker Dumont Clark, which that video I did yesterday was a freaking rocket ship. I'll recap that real quick, too. It says Clark's a 4-year vet who had his most productive season in 23 when he got a chance to start all 17 games in Dallas. In his second season in the league and recorded 109 tackles. That was a breakout year for him. And then Peyton Turner. I mean, like, you guys, this is the most underrated signing if I've ever seen one. A former first-round pick that just had some injuries, small little injuries, can consistently creep up on him. But he's still young. He doesn't have a lot of wear on his body. Yeah, he's 6'6", 270 pounds. That's your strong side defensive end. Wanham is your weak side defensive end, even though he can play both sides. But if I were to say that backups and potential starters where they belong, I'm going to say that Turner's right defensive end, we'll call it. Wanham is going to be your left defensive end behind Aiden Hutchinson. But that doesn't mean that Wanham won't be on the field when Aiden's on the field either, because he's great in the run game. Now, Peyton Turner recorded 50 tackles and 5 sacks so far throughout his NFL career. And just remember, like, just because someone doesn't have a bunch of stats, and, I kept seeing this comment too. People kept talking about players that we've brought in, and they say, well, go look at the PFF grades. Go look at the PFF scores. And I'm like, pause. If the player didn't even have 250 snaps, the grades don't even matter. They're not valid. They're not accurate. And PFF is a great guide. It is. But the film is where you need to live. And if you don't have the film, if you don't have time to watch the film, don't rely on just PFF. Because there's a lot of things in there that people don't understand. Like, they don't know what certain things mean, certain stats mean. There's a key. You can read the key, but how does that actually apply to the game is different, right? Everyone understands what a sack is, what a tackle is, what a missed tackle is, an assist or a combo tackle. I think just about everybody understands that stuff that watches football. But when you start to get into all the other metrics and the analytics, the ADOTs and everything else, that is a different layer of understanding, right? The splits and all that. There's so much in there that your average fan will never take the time to understand. Doesn't mean they're a bad fan or an uneducated fan. They just haven't taken the time to do it. And once you do when you take the time to do it, everything starts to make sense a little bit more. And you start to have those aha moments. Lions also brought back Teddy Bridgewater, and then we got offensive lineman Juice Scruggs thrown in on a trade for David Montgomery. So very productive. The re-signings, Rocky Sin, Tom Kennedy, Trevor Nowaski, Jake Bates, Miles Adams, Malcolm Rodriguez. Very, very, very productive. Last thing I'll say on this before we get into the next piece here is, there's been a lot of things flying around. Brad Holmes not spending money, and we don't normally sign 1-year deals like this. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know who started spreading that rumor. I can imagine where it came from, but it's not correct. I've even seen guys that cover this team say that, and I made sure to say that's not correct. Here's my article that tells you how many 1-year deals we've signed on average. About 88% of all deals that Brad Holmes has done since 2021 are 1-year deals. So it's nothing new, and that shouldn't surprise you. Like, why would you want to overcommit to guys when you have other guys that you have to pay? If you haven't figured it out by now, look, Brad's paying Jack, Brad's paying Jameer, and to a lesser extent, I don't know about Sam Laporta or Brian Branch. I would assume that Brian Branch is going to get paid. But at some point, you got to draw a line in the sand. And these guys might get paid and traded too. You might get a paid and trade. You never know, man. You never know. That's what makes the NFL so fun. You just never know. We'll get into the chat here for a minute. Good morning. So you got Trace, of course, in the house. John Desage, Bruce MacArthur. Eric's on business, Bruce. Eric's on business. He has rock shows. I think he's done with the rock shows. Maybe he's heading back home today. Edge is not the answer. Good morning, Mr. Thomas. Mike P78. Is that another new handle? Nick P. Peter Van Larhoven. Jay Cruzen. Nightbot. What's up, Nightbot? Good morning. Brian Brady. Who else is in here? MD. Gladiator. Let's see. F Sun. Wait. FSU Knoll. Okay, now I got it. FSU Knoll. Aleem and Barnes will be coming over years removed from knee injuries. There you go, man. Just need guys to stay healthy. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Who else is in here today? What else is in here today? The Wall Street Wizard? We got trolls in the house. Do I need to do something with some trolls? Yeah, we just got to get rid of the trolls. I'm just gonna bounce them. Like, I'm not even gonna deal with it. I don't need people coming into this chat and like trying to disrupt and just be idiots because they're idiots. And I hate to use that word because that's not who I am. Like, I try not to talk about people like that, but if you're being an idiot in the chat, then yeah. You won't last long in here. There we go. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about Kirby Joseph yet. We're going to be doing the 2-minute drill. Those 2-minute drills are funny, man. That was a great addition this year. I don't remember them doing that before in seasons past. I don't ever remember the Lions doing something like that, but that was some good stuff, man. Really, really good stuff. What else do we have on the docket today? So Kirby, Shephard gets his guys. We'll talk about that. 2-minute drill, Tim Twentyman on Believe Network. We'll probably wrap up with that. And let's just go right into Kirby Joseph. We'll do that. I'm going to take a quick 15-second break. We'll reset. I'll be right back.
Pressured by Hutchinson, he goes down again.
Okay, a lot of conversation this weekend about Kirby Joseph. It is March 23rd, 2026, and we're doing some weekend notes and news about your Detroit Lions. And Kirby Joseph's name kept coming up. And there was an article that came out, probably a couple of days ago by Mike Payton talking about Kirby Joseph. And I want to bring that in. We're going to talk about it, and then I want to talk about some other things that kind of go along with this, and then clear up what I'm not saying it's misinformation. Let's just say the information is not complete here. It's not all there. And so I want to clear some of that up. Not that it's my job, but this is just what I do, because when I try to put it information out, I want to make sure it's correct. So, and you know what? Sometimes I'm not always correct. Like, I make mistakes just like everybody else does. Let's talk about this one here. So it says the Lions just did something that shows Kirby Joseph is still in their plans for the foreseeable future. He goes on to say that the Lions are showing they feel good about Joseph with their wallet. This is March 20th, 2026 at about 4 p.m. Okay, so he says if there is something that the Detroit Lions fans are thinking about a lot, it's the knee of all-pro safety Kirby Joseph. What went wrong with Joseph's knee? He says, look, we've talked about this a lot, but this whole thing got blown way out of proportion. by humans doing the very human thing of going to the worst possible scenario they could find. In this case, it's that Joseph's knee, which kept him out of most of the season, is a career-altering one. Let me say that again. Is a career-altering one. Now, I'm going to come back to that statement because that is a very different statement than he's made before. He says, where did that come from? Not the Lions. They have never reported what Joseph's actual injury is, and not once did they say it was career-altering. Joseph never said it was career-altering. The very fact that the Lions refuse to move him to IR showed that it wasn't something they felt he couldn't come back from in 2025. Pause there. The reason why they didn't put Kirby Joseph to IR wasn't necessarily because they thought he could come back. It's just that if they don't know what they don't know, and it was a cartilage-related issue, and there was a lot of inflammation and pain, and there was no structural damage, you don't move a player to IR when there's no structural damage. If there's no torn ligaments, if you don't have any muscle issues, if you don't have a broken bone, it is doubtful that you're going to go to IR. When a player is navigating through an injury that you just don't know enough, you don't just stash a player on IR for that reason. At least from my understanding of how most of these GMs operate when it comes to IR. The other thing is the Lions already had a lot of players coming back and going to IR last season. You only get so many, and so the Lions were not about to waste an IR designation, because if Kirby couldn't play, he couldn't play. And they felt like they had enough on the roster to do what they needed to do anyway. The other thing that they could have done is I think that they could have just scratched him from a game. That doesn't necessarily, kick him off the roster, but you could scratch him from the game, right? Didn't the Lions do that a handful of times? So you don't necessarily have to go in and put somebody on IR. But anyway, he goes on to say, but the internet doctors of the world decided that they knew what the injury was without treating the player or even knowing what the actual diagnosis was, and proclaimed that it was a career-altering injury. With one of their side mouths, while saying they don't have all the information with the other side of their mouths, fans unfortunately believed all that. Well, I think that we understand now. Anytime that you have a cartilage issue, it's career-altering, right? Cartilage doesn't come back. It doesn't come back. And the Lions absolutely would have to report the injury to the NFL if it was something that was damaged while playing. Well, in this case, that wouldn't be the case if it was cartilage, right? Because cartilage can detach. Cartilage can be degenerative, and that word degenerative has already been said by Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, which tells you it's not football related, but football compounded the issue. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I have a lot of these same issues in my body. So the degenerative nature of the knee would mean that you don't have to put a designation on the injury for Kirby Joseph to the NFL, because nothing structurally changed from the game the way that I understand how the rule works. Goes on to say that at the end of the day, the only outside report that we have seen that is not career-altering, but obviously only time will tell, and that's simply due to the fact that, yes, lingering issues could affect his play down the road. At the same time, Kirby Joseph's knee could turn out to be just fine. We won't know until we know. That's factual. I get all that. But that's obviously not the case right now, and the Lions' latest moves at least show that they have him in mind for the foreseeable future. This is where I have a problem. What the Lions just did shows that they have Kirby Joseph involved in their foreseeable future. Well, what the hell did they do? Because nothing's been done. Oh, wait. Just last week, on Friday, the third day of the new league year, the Lions guaranteed $8.74 million of Joseph's 2027 salary. Now, it's fair to mention that $13 million of Joseph's 2027 salary was already injury guaranteed, but not fully guaranteed. Now, I'm going to pause in just 1 second, and I'm going to explain why, in my opinion, that information that was just shared is not correct. So what does this mean? If he had gotten cut and passed the physical, he wouldn't have received that money. But if he hadn't passed the physical due to an injury, he would get the money. Because he's injured, the Lions couldn't cut him without paying those guarantees anyway. Now it's all fully guaranteed regardless of the situation. When did Kirby have a physical? Did he come in and have a physical on the third day? Probably not. He's been injured since last year. He's not on IR. He's not on NFI. So he's still just a regular old Joe football player. But it's doubtful that they're having this guy come in for a physical. This stuff was already done. Like, this stuff is supposed to happen. Meaning this. Kirby Joseph's contract was pre-written when he signed it. So on the third day of the new league year in 2027, it was already pre-written. So here's his deal. In 2025, the extension, Kirby Joseph signed a 4-year, $86 million contract with the Detroit Lions, including $10,011,000 in signing bonus, $36,121,000 in guarantees, and an average annual salary of $21.5 million. In 2026, Joseph will earn a base salary of $1.215 million. That's damn cheap, right? And a signing bonus of $9.625 million. A workout bonus of $150K. He'll carry a cap hit of $5.4722 and a dead cap value of $29,508. So Kirby wasn't cut. Kirby wasn't released. At least now he wasn't. Had the Lions done if they would have released him, they would have taken on a significant amount of cap. Right? They would have taken a pretty large cap hit this year. If they release him next year, if things don't go well this year, well, that's their out years, 2027. If they did a post-June 1 release, I haven't done one now since the new league year. We'll have to take a look at that. I don't know how that's changed anything right now. Because the guarantee hit on the third day, the biggest question is, they're saying that they just did that. The Lions just went in and said, hey, here's another $9 million. We feel confident for you for the season. If that's how you read it, that the Lions just out of the blue paid the guy another $9 million or whatever it was, 8 point whatever. Here's the truth. Here's the contract notes. This has been in here since day one of the contract being understood. $8.74 million of the 2027 salary fully guarantees on the third league day of 2026. This is how every contract is written. It's usually on the first or the third, league day, of the new year. I said that totally wrong. The third league day of the new year. A lot of players' bonuses hit. Aiden's just got his bonus just hit too, or his guarantee just hit as well. This is how the Lions do their contracts. Because if they're going to cut somebody, they're going to try to do it before the league day. So if the Lions wanted to cut him and they cut him on the second day of the 2026 new league year, well, then those guarantees don't happen. Right? But what happens is now you carry the significant cap hit of what was already guaranteed to him and what you've already extended through bonuses and void years, which, let's just be honest, the Lions can't do that. They don't have enough money to do it unless they restructure more and put everything on a credit card and then release the guy and take a huge cap hit. So explain why the Lions would ever even think about doing something like that, right? You can't. They're expecting for this guy to go into the season. If they didn't release him in the offseason, if they didn't release him during free agency, they're not going to do it now. Right? So next year, this is how his bonuses hit. Next year, he has a 2027 option bonus, a 2028 option bonus, 2029 option bonus, He gets a per game active bonus, so he's missing out on some money there. His 2028 salary escalates $250,000 each for 2025 and 2026 Super Bowl appearances. Well, you better get one this year. So anyway, that's just how the contracts work. Look at this. Next year, an additional $3 million of the 2027 salary fully guarantees the third league day of 2027. So here's what we're going to hear next year, right? Let's just say Kirby makes it through the season. I don't really want to finish that statement. Let's just say another player, any other player in the league has what just happened to Kirby. And so then the next year, their team, if they had the exact same contract as Kirby, you find out that the team just gave him $3 million the third league day of the season, of the new league year. And you write that same article saying, well, the Lions are fully invested. He must be fully healthy. He should be ready to go because they just gave him another $3 million. You see the difference there? Like, that's not accurate. This contract was pre-written. So we'll leave it at that. But I do want to go back to something. Talking about all the big guarantees that the Lions are giving Joseph, and it has to make you feel good, like that they're doing it, right? That's what the article goes on to say. And I'm thinking to myself, like, no. No. Like this stuff, like you should know this stuff if you cover the team, and you've been covering the team, you understand football. But trying to say that these are big amounts of money that the Lions are giving Joseph and it has to make you feel good that they're doing it. No, it was part of his contract already. Like, this isn't new money. They just didn't wake up and say, damn, you know what? Let's go give Kirby an extra $8 million today. We think he's going to play this year. Let's just go give him another $8 million. That would be stupid. Right? So what would happen if Kirby can't play this year? Is another article going to come out and say, man, Brad was really stupid. He gave Kirby another $8.47 million or $8.74 million on the third league day of 2026. And is that how the narrative's going to spin? Because that's what I'm anticipating. So he said that they could have very well declined the bonus. What? You can't decline the bonus. You can't decline the guarantee. If you decline the guarantee, because this is not a bonus, then you have to get rid of the contract, which means you have to then get rid of the player. I don't get it. I don't get it. And then we live inside social media because Kirby Joseph posted a play up, with Ifeatu Melifonwu. Well, maybe Ifeatu Melifonwu's coming back, but I'm not going to live inside social media and what people post and think that something's happening, right? I'm not going to do that. So we go back to last year. All right. Last year, he says that Lions safety Kirby Joseph's knee injury is not considered career altering, despite the online speculation. This was December 2, 2025. And then in that same breath, we get this from Jordan Schultz last year around the same time, saying that Lions All-Pro safety Kirby Joseph has been dealing with a nagging knee injury, which has kept him out of the lineup, but he intends to return to the field this season. This is last year in December. He never returned to the field, and that the injury is not considered career-altering, as some have speculated per multiple sources. Okay, how does that look now? Because he hasn't played since week 5 or week 6 of 2025. Joseph will likely seek treatment for the knee in the offseason, but he has plans to be on the field in the coming weeks. Well, that never happened. So obviously that is career-altering. Right? Any which way you look at it, that is career altering. That was December 2, 2025 at 3:14 p.m. is when this was printed, right? Kind of the same thing with this article here. Now, again, look, I'm not outwardly trying to just attack this dude for the things that he's written or said, but what I am trying to do is correct the record here. That's it. All I'm trying to do is correct the record to make sure that we all understand that Kirby Joseph's contract was pre-written, that this stuff happens every year. I'll give you another example. Let's just do Aiden Hutchinson, right? Let's do Aiden Hutchinson's contract because Aiden had that massive injury last year, right? He was coming back from. So I wonder if this info's still in here. I haven't looked. I'm sure it is. Hope it is. Nope, they took it out. Maybe. Nope. Yeah, it looks like they took the majority of it out, but let's just take a look at it anyway. Looks like they updated it to keep it fresh, which I think is not the smart way of doing this. I think you need to put it all in there and just leave it all in there. You don't need to update it. That'll be my suggestion to the guy. Just leave it there. Like, don't take away the previous history because we like to know. So, for Aiden's contract, here you go. In 2027, an additional $19.8 million of 2027 salary fully guarantees on the third league day of 2026. So that means Aiden, just a week ago or two, right, was given another $19.8 million of guarantees, and it's injury guaranteed at sign. Okay? In 2028, $29.8 million of 2028 salary fully guarantees on the third league day of 2027. Injury guarantees at sign. 2029, $29 million of the 2029 salary fully guarantees on the third league day. So again, this is not new stuff. This is in the contract. It's burned into the contract from the day that he signed it. So if something were to happen to Aiden and they pay him $29 million in a couple seasons, it was supposed to happen. Or if the guarantee was getting, upgraded into the contract, I mean, it's now guaranteed. Well, that was supposed to happen. Now, I can't remember last year what happened, but he had the $55.4 million guarantee at sign, the signing bonus plus 2025 compensation, and the 2026 compensation, plus $10 million of the 2027 salary. That was all guaranteed at signing. So there was nothing that really needed to hit this year for Aiden because it was all guaranteed already. But see, this is a smart contract. And when you look at this on the face value, right now there's 19.8, 29.8, and another 29 million that are not guaranteed. So that means that's 58, 68, 78. What is that? That's almost $80 million that is not guaranteed in his contract right now. So if the Lions decided to walk away from Aiden next year and trade him, well, that $80 million is not guaranteed. So there's not a giant cap hit. I mean, it's still going to be big, but it's not going to be, big to where it would have been. Let's just take a look. Let's go to 2027. Let's trade him. Let's do pre-June 1 trade first. This is what happens. The Lions would lose $15.676 million with a pre-June 1 trade. They would have a cap hit of $7.3 million next year, and then a $29.5 million dead cap hit. And that is it. Now, I didn't cross all that out. Why didn't it cross all that out? So it'd give them about a $31 million cap hit. Now, if they were to do a post-June 1, different story. Post-June 1, they save about $7.4 million. Their cap hit next year would be 8.6, and then they spread out that remaining balance of the 31-ish million to the next year in 2028, where it'd be a $23 million cap hit. That's it. So to walk away from a $181 million contract next season, this is what it would cost them, about $32 million. That's not bad. So again, I'll go back to what I was trying to say. Like, this stuff is baked into the contract, and the way that the Lions did this contract is super smart. It's the same thing with Kirby. It was all there before the new league year started. Any questions on that? Am I making myself clear on this, hopefully? What's the best post of the day? Where is it? Peters, where is it? Let's see what it says. See, Clinton says, don't they re-sign Daniel Thomas if they expected Kirby to be out? What do you mean by that? Like, look, I think they're going to get a safety in the draft. I mean, this draft is kind of deep for safety. Actually, it is deep for safety. But they have Harper. They brought Creary in, who can play box safety. Azine can play box safety. Harper can play safety. So we have Maddox and Thomas. And I think Thomas is already gone. I think he's already been picked up. But Maddox could still be coming back, and that could be an after the draft, if I'm making any sense. Peter Van Larhoven says, as Lions fans, we need to stand by Kirby and pray that things can work out for 100%. 100%, man. I'm hoping Kirby's fine. I want him to play. Like, can you imagine not having him on the field next year and in the situation that we were in last year and Brian Branch? Like, that's a lot to recover from. And I guess if you're reading between the tea leaves here a little bit, I would say that Nick Cross would have been a perfect pickup to help this defense. And the Lions didn't do that for a reason. Either that means they're 100% confident in the way that the Kirby and Brian are developing, or they're doing something in the draft, or both. But I've said it before, my intel prior to the legal tampering day, my intel said that the Lions were doing all of their homework on DBs and linebackers. What have we seen so far? Izzian, McCreary, Clark, Wanham, who was 3-4 outside linebacker, now playing edge. So, yeah, the intel was right. But it was DBs, more so CBs. We didn't get, really any safeties in, but we got some two-way players. So, there's something to that. I think that this draft and where the Lions are picking, I think that they have an opportunity to bring in two safeties this year, or a safety in a corner at least, that, one of them, preferably the safety, could be a very valuable starter immediately. And that could be any one of the three, whether it's Dylan Thieneman, McNeil Warren, which would be my number one choice, and or Caleb Downs, which I would run away from. Too many injuries with Caleb Downs. I know that sounds like what some people say, that's a Brad Holmes signing. Yeah, I'd run the other direction. I think he's a bit small, and I think he's got some injury concerns that have not fully been vetted out, at least from what I've seen. Now, I know 0.1% of what Brad Holmes knows, so I don't have any medical reports on Caleb Downs, nor should I have any medical reports on Caleb Downs. So, anyway, that's it. We covered Kirby. Look, do I want Kirby back? 100%. Do I think that we're stretching some of this stuff a little bit too far? Talking about, the guarantees and how the Lions, yes, 100%. They're stretching that a bit too far. And I think it paints the wrong idea of what the Lions are really trying to do or what they have done. But we'll leave it at that. Shephard gets his guys. So let's get into that when we come back. Give me just a quick small break here. Be right back.
Throwing middle, caught inside the 5. Jameer Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap, back looking, throwing middle. Got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touch.
Pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down again.
Okay, welcome back to Rockhound Detroit Lions Rise and Grind Morning Show. Appreciate you guys joining me here this morning. If you haven't had an opportunity, please check out DetroitFootballJournal.com. Is my latest and greatest passion project, writing about your Detroit Lions. A lot of my draft analysis is on that website. And then if you would like to further your education in draft analysis, please visit draftsignal.pro. That is the collaboration of about 13 of us putting all of our heads together in our evaluations for Coach DC there over at All 22. A lot of great information, man. Some amazing writers, scouts, analysts. Everybody's involved. I feel like I'm one of the greenhorns of the group. So it was an absolute pleasure to be invited to contribute this year. And I can't thank DC enough for even thinking of me. And I think that just, kind of makes me feel all warm inside that, maybe people do actually read the stuff that I write. So please check both of those out. If you do subscribe on DetroitFootballJournal.com, like I said, I'll give you a 6-month membership for free just for signing up today. That will end at the end of March. And then beginning April 1st, we'll have some sort of a new program. Kelvin Shephard. So how does the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator build a war chest for himself in 2026? And what does that look like? And why were some of the signings that the Lions brought in, one, extremely important, but two, so closely connected to Kelvin Shephard? I guess it was even said to me over the weekend that, is Kelvin Shephard doing all the free agency work on the defense? Because it kind of looks that way. And I said, I don't think so, but I think that whenever you value your defensive coordinator and you listen and trust your defensive coordinator, you trust your coaching staff, that, Dan and Brad both probably had their meeting conversation, and I'm not saying I know this is speculative, to ask him, what would he do differently? What kind of players would you want to bring in? What players do you feel could help this team here in 2026? This is the checkbook that we're dealing with. Where could we do some damage? And immediately he reaches into, his Rolodex of players that he's either played with, coached, or has intimate relation with through previous, occupations. And that was LSU. Immediately reaching out to, some players that he's been around. But Damone Clark was, I think, an extremely good signing. And the more and more we get into it, I did that video last night that Micah Parsons had mentioned back in his rookie season, Damone Clark's rookie season, that he was faster than Micah Parsons. This is a guy that's coming back from a spinal surgery. I know that scares the hell out of everybody, especially Lions fans, because of Levi. But look what happened to Levi in 24. He had a breakout year, and then obviously the leg issue. But it doesn't mean that you can't come back, right? It doesn't mean that you still can't play. And man, he's been playing at a high level when he's been given an opportunity. And in the video, I go on to discuss why Damone Clark was kind of relegated to a special teams assignment, especially after his breakout season. But to give you the Cliff Notes version, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch the video, I would advise it because there's some good information in there, that the philosophy in Dallas changed. So Dan Quinn, now head coach of Washington Commanders, was then the defensive coordinator. He prioritized that 4-3. He prioritized the run and hit style of Damone Clark, that hunter, if you will. The guy that would be sideline to sideline, tries to stay clean and navigate through the offensive line by utilizing the holes that the defensive line creates. And then hunt, right, read, react, and then pursue. That changed, right? When Mike Zimmer came in, that all changed. So he was no longer utilized in the same fashion. Zimmer trusted in his guys, Hendricks and I can never pronounce the one guy's name, Louis Fatu or Louis Fau, whatever. I can never pronounce his name. So they bring in those guys that they trust. Now, Louis Fau has like really long arms, 34.5-inch arms. So the length is what was prioritized, right? The ability to stack and shed was prioritized. The wider base and anchor. These, some of these guys were more 6 foot, shorter, stockier guys, where Clark's like 6'2.5", 6'3", still has good length, like 33-inch arms, 240 pounds, but they prioritized the shorter, squattier, linebackers that, you kind of see today, and it kind of edged him out of a role. So, and then they brought in DeMarion Overshown, which clearly I don't know necessarily beat Clark out, but I would say they prioritized that player versus Clark for whatever reason. Is what it is. It wasn't Zimmer's guy. Zimmer didn't draft him. Zimmer didn't want him. He wasn't there. So he moves on to the Texans. He doesn't really carve out a necessary role with Houston outside of special teams, but he's a damn good special teamer. So whether he's a starting will linebacker or whether he's a specialist for Detroit, I think that we should all be able to agree that he has immense ability. I don't know about you guys, but springtime's the worst for me, man. It's just crazy. I got flowers growing already, and pollen is nuts. I don't even think we have pollen yet, but you know what I'm saying. So the priority for Calvin Shephard this year was bringing in some guys that he's familiar with. And so Houston, they claimed him late in 2025 after his stint in Dallas, and Clark, when he arrived in Detroit, is now a veteran linebacker. He only had 55 career games, 26 starts, 109 tackle campaign in 2023 that really broke the mold for who he could be as that Hunter, style of a linebacker, the Alex Anzalone style of a linebacker. And so with Alex Anzalone departing to Tampa in free agency, obviously we needed that second level enforcer to pair up with Jack Campbell. And immediately Clark is that guy. If the Lions can't go into this draft and go and find their next guy immediately, and they have to, if they're relegated to getting a guy later in the draft that may not be an immediate starter, well, then I think you have your answer. They wanted a vet that they could trust immediately to go in and play a high volume snaps, which Clark has had low mileage the last couple of seasons. So he's healthy, right? His body isn't all beat up. And so I think that really gives the Lions a unique opportunity to get this, energy injection into this defense. But they prioritize the Shephard connection, I guess is where I'm going with this. The bond between Clark and Shephard was forged in Baton Rouge at LSU. During that 2020 season, Shephard was the director of player development while Clark was, a middle linebacker in that defense. So Clark was even given that number 18 jersey. I know I've talked about this a few times, but it's highly coveted as a guy that epitomizes what LSU is all about on and off the field. It's an honor that's reserved for that player that really best represents the leadership, the character, the standard, the dedication. And so can you imagine now, or you can see now, why Clark is that next glue guy. And so yesterday I was talking about glue guys and how, even Glover Quinn mentioned, like, where's all our glue guys now? Well, sometimes the guys that you bring in become immediate glue guys. Like, he's tacky walking into the door. I mean, tacky in a good way, right? He's going to be able to stick to some of these guys, and they should be able to work around Clark. So the relationship, between Calvin Shephard and Dumont Clark is valuable, and I feel like it doesn't really end there because he's always remained in contact with Calvin Shephard in between the season, after games, whatever. Whenever we've met, when he was playing with Dallas and even Houston. But he said this. He said, "Man, I'm blessed just to be in this position, to be able to come here and get coached by Shep, because I know who he is, how he is outside of ball, and it ain't no different. He's going to always shoot it straight to you. I talked to him today. At the end of the day, I need to do what I got to do. There's no homeboys in this business. You need to come in here, put your head down, and go to work. And the best man will win. Perfect. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. And then there's DJ Wanham. So he's the edge, that we brought in. The acquisition was really to fix or at least add to the pass rush department. Now, leaving your cornerback stranded out on an island all the time, last season, which is kind of what happened. I feel like the Lions wanted to go in a different direction here. The different style of player that was better against the run versus just the pass. AQM was better pass rusher than he was against the run. I mean, he was terrible according to the ADOT. He ranked 205, I think, out of 206 or 207. And so one of the worst players, but then I think you have to look at things holistically too. And when you don't have DBs that can help in the run game like Brian Branch, and that kind of leaves your edge rushers on their own island, right? If you don't have anyone backing them up, then they're on their own island too. So it goes both ways. So Wanham's relationship, and that connection with Shephard, Wanham said that, Wanham and his circle idolized Shephard during the coordinator's playing days. And if I remember correctly, it was Wanham's connection that was really built through the admiration and eventual professional networking with Shephard. So there was no like LSU connection or anything like that, but it was more so of them admiring or him admiring, Shephard from afar. However, even though that there's this deep-seated respect between the two, I think that, the relationship that Wanham has with Shephard already and what he's being asked to do is also going to turn into becoming another glue guy. Even though that they're a free agent coming in, that doesn't mean that they can't affect the room. These guys were brought in for very specific purposes, not just on the field, but also their leadership and their qualities inside the locker room. And that's all valuable, right? The culture, the scheme fit, all that stuff is still valuable. I know a lot of people out there get sick of hearing it. They don't want to talk about it. They think it's BS. Brad prioritizes culture too much. He doesn't want to bring in any guys that can just bang heads, but he does. And it does matter, because if you have guys in the locker room that are viruses, you can forget about a season. It's not going to work. You need guys that are all on the same page. You need guys like on our offense. They're okay if they only got 2 touches in a game. They're okay if they only got 2 passes in a game. Look at Jamison Williams, man. A lot of times he doesn't get utilized, but when he does get utilized, they try to put him in a position to win, put him in a position to get downfield into that end zone. So if he gets 4 passes for, 50, 60 yards and a TD, he's good as long as they win the game. That's what it's all about. We need guys that want to win together, not guys that want to win in the stat sheet, because that's where you won't win. If you're an independent, if you're an individual inside a locker room, that usually does not bear fruit at the end of the year. So the bottom line is this: by leveraging Calvin Shephard's personal network, which he had with DJ Wanham and obviously Dumont Clark, I think that Brad Holmes really maximized not only the salary cap efficiency, but he also didn't get into this massive bidding war for all these tier 1 defensive players, which I think a lot of us understand that that's just not who Brad is. I think that the Lions identified the highly motivated guys that maybe were undervalued by other teams and scheme fluent veterans, which I think is the most important thing outside of the glue piece, is you have guys that are coming in to understand the scheme. And they're vets at that, so they're already carrying a little bit of weight. They don't need this large learning curve, when they're walking in the door. They're able to go put their hard hat on and get to work, I think for both Clark and Wanham, bypassing this traditional learning curve, if you will, I think that that's going to be extremely important. It's going to help the younger guys and the other guys around them to be able to develop a lot quicker as well. And I think, that'll also bear its own fruit out when you see these guys playing well together in developing that chemistry. So there's a lot of great things going here for the Lions in this free agency period. I think that, the two main components, like I said, with Wanham and Clark, I think that those are the only two that explicitly cited a pre-existing or close relationship with Calvin Shephard. So it's kind of like Calvin has his guys, and these are his agents, his inside agents, if he was insiders, that he can depend on. Guys that are going to do a lot more for him because they respect him and they know him. So his fingerprints, they're on this roster. I think they were targeted moves, and I think it's all going to work out. I mean, look, we didn't go out and sign the most expensive guys in the world. But I think if you look at the statistical output by all of the guys that are available, you're going to see that a lot of the guys that don't make the big bucks have the biggest impact. I'd rather have 4, 5, 6 tier 2 guys than one tier 1 guy. And I think it can be explained as simply as this. As simply as this. Micah Parsons gets brought in to the Packers last year. They're pushing all their chips in. They think they're going to go win a Super Bowl. Blew up in their face. Because they got rid of Kenny Clark, right? It was Kenny Clark in that trade. They no longer had their big interior guy that played on the outside as well. That guy was a menace. A menace all the time. Yeah, he might have been a little bit older, but he was still playing at a very high level. They also got rid of Gary, right? So that's going to be two guys that the Packers are not going to have this year. And in my opinion, those are probably the bigger impact players that you'd probably want to have this year when you don't have a Parsons. Or at least you don't have a Parsons to start the season. So they got rid of Kenny Clark. Yeah, they got a couple of first-round picks. One this year, one next year. But that trade completely blew up in their face. And then they had to get rid of more players this year because they can't afford it because of Parsons. So imagine for a moment that you're the Lions. You're a Lions fan. And they went out and got Trey Henderson. And they signed him to a 4-year, $112 million deal. And in the 6th game of the season, he blows out his knee. And he's done. But not only is he done, but then he decides, you know what? In the next year, I'm just going to retire. Like, I'm not coming back after all this. I'm old enough. I had enough guarantee in that contract. I can walk away. So you wasted all those first round picks if you traded for the player, right? And then you signed him to a big deal. Now, I realize Hendrickson wasn't traded for, but I'm just using him as an example. So had you traded for him, and then you signed him to a record-setting deal or the 3rd or 4th most expensive deal, and then the player gets injured, then how do you feel? Who's to blame now? Brad. Why? Because Brad made the trade. But you see, last year, to all the people that kept saying that the Lions were in the hunt for Parsons, bullshit. That's not true. But had Brad brought in Parsons and that same injury happened, what do you think everyone would have been saying about Brad back then? Oh, he would have been, should have been fired, right? I mean, I would have jumped on that train. I absolutely would have jumped on that train. Because that would have totally derailed this team. Your future's gone, big cap hit, and now the player's done. That's exactly why you don't. I mean, I guess I would have thought by now that the whole Parsons debacle would have woke up that side of the Lions fan base to finally realize that everything that I've been saying now for 3-4 seasons here on Rockhound Detroit Lions or during the Rise and Grind morning show or wherever I'm at, that it's finally coming true. The biggest thing that I've always warned everybody against is the what ifs. And the what if is you bring that player and he gets injured, he can no longer play. but you sign him to a massive deal that now you're on the hook for because you have a lot of injury guarantee. It clearly didn't wake anybody up. They still totally believe that was a great deal for the Packers. Parsons may never be the same player ever again. He's definitely going to lose a step. And he definitely won't be the same player this year. So there's that. I'm not going to go too deep off into that because we've talked about that numerous times. Just know that it usually never works out. And in the teams that usually spend the most amount of money usually don't win the Super Bowl either. I do know this, man. The Seattle Seahawks had drafted extremely well. And I know I've said this before too, but there was another comment somewhere talking about Brad Holmes. It might have been on one of my videos talking about the dollar bin or the, what do they call them? Yeah, dollar bin or bargain bin Brad. That, you know, signing all these low cap guys and, you know, these second tier guys. And then, you know, drafting guys like Giovanni Manu, Broderick Martin, Hendon Hooker, Rakestraw, Sione Vaki, and I think there was one more. I think there was one more added to that list. But anyway, they go in and they're talking about that and saying, how is it that the Lions are getting better when Brad is missed on all of those players? And I'm asking the question, you know, well, I'm stating the question, I guess, back to them. I'm going to turn this light down. I'm stating the question back to them like, you clearly don't follow the team. Because Vaki, when he's on the field, has been one of the best special teams gunners in the league. He's been one of the best special teamers in the league, period, when he's on the field. He can also return kicks and punts. And again, when he's on the field, he's back there. And he does a lot more than what meets the eye. And just because he's drafted in the 3rd or the 4th round does not mean that that player is supposed to be this amazing football player. You know, just because you're in the 3rd round does not mean that you're supposed to be a starter. And I've given you all the numbers. It's like less than 15% of all 3rd round picks ever start a game in the NFL. And less than 3% of that 15% ever become elite football players in the NFL. And I bring all this up for the 100th time because, well, the Patriots, the reason why they spent all that money last year is because they don't have any 4th round picks on their roster anymore but one. And a lot of their 3rd round picks are gone too. So they've wasted tons of draft capital. Tons. And those players didn't work out. The other thing, and then I'll walk away from this, is not every draft is the same. Right? Not every draft has, you know, positions that are deep. You know, certain positions that are deep. Some have a lot of quarterbacks. This year we don't. How does that affect the draft? Well, when you have a lot of quarterbacks, that pushes all of your top tier offensive linemen and edge and defend, you know, your defensive tackles and your wide receivers, pushes them down, you know, towards the end of the 1st round. So when you're picking at the end of the 1st round and you have a deep draft for quarterbacks, you're going to get a lot luckier than had you been in this draft where you don't have any quarterbacks. And now all the premium players are going to be taken in the top 15, 16, 17 picks. Just because we're picking at 17, the Lions actually have a good opportunity at grabbing a really good football player this year. But that's about the extent of the 1st round. Like, there may not even be 17 first-round grades. I haven't said how many I have yet. I'm still undecided. So, again, I say all this to say that not every draft is the same, and then a lot of the players that were coming out of those COVID years, 2020, 2021, they were not fully developed. You know, some either stayed in, and that's why you're seeing more 24, 25-year-olds entering the draft. They stayed in because they wanted to get to development, and or they didn't get to development, and so their career was sidelined, or they took a couple of seasons off because they were eligible to do that. So not every draft is going to be the same. I think that a lot of us agree there, and I think that had COVID not happened, I think that you would have had a better stock of football player in some of those drafts, especially 24 and 25. Those are some of the weaker drafts in certain areas that I've seen in a long time. 23's draft was pretty solid. 22's draft was pretty solid as far as deep, but this might be one of the deeper drafts that I've seen in multiple positions, but they're not positions that you normally would want to be deep. Like running back is not a position you typically want to be deep in. And the premium positions like offensive line, offensive guard, they're not that deep. There's a ton of right tackles. There's hardly any true left tackles in this draft. So it's really difficult for a team to go out and get the player that they want because there is no left tackles. And I guess a lot of people disagreed with me on that, but now you're starting to hear it from around the league. Daniel Jeremiah's coming around to it. Mel Kiper's coming around to it. Field Yates is coming around to it. And they're all saying that this draft is missing the true left tackles. So for the Lions at 17, they're going to be in a hole if all the true left tackles go. And who are the true left tackles? Well, Caden Proctor's number 1 overall. And outside of that, you have very, very few. I think Lomu might be the only other one that I would truly say is a true left tackle at the next level. It's really thin. It's really thin. It's razor thin. Let's see, Spencer Fano. I mean, I guess you could say he's left or right, but I'll get into that another day. We'll get into that another day. I do have a lot of draft stuff that's going to be dropping here. I've been trying to get everything fixed over the weekend. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. And I've been getting some new graphics ready so that I can start releasing the top 25 videos. And then, I mean, wow, we're just like 8 days away from April, man. So 3.0 is going to come out and then mock draft. So I've got to get another mock draft done, and I'll probably do that tonight. It's always mock draft Monday around here. I haven't been able to do a whole lot of them because we've been doing other things, but I'll probably do a mock draft here tonight. Let's get into eyes are just burning. Let's get into the 2-minute drill, man. This stuff was great. And now you guys are going to see what I'm talking about with that, with the name. His nickname is the exact same name of the play that I created. Let's just start with him. Here we go.
What's up, Motor City? Greg Dorch here. This is the 2-minute drill.
Favorite childhood athlete?
Barry Sanders.
What's your nickname?
The Torch.
Do you have a hidden talent?
I can sing.
Piece of advice you give to your younger self?
Never give up.
What is your why?
My dad.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Introvert.
Player you model your game after?
Tavon Austin.
Something on your bucket list?
Go to Japan.
Best lesson your parents taught you?
Always be a good person.
Soundtrack to your life?
Views by Drake.
What type of music makes you kick someone off the aux?
Skip.
Favorite show growing up?
Sports Center.
Favorite thing to eat post-game?
Chicken wings.
Best recess activity?
Play football.
Favorite way to spend an off day?
Sleep.
Favorite book?
Bible.
Quote you live by?
Keep God first.
Thing you're most looking forward to about Detroit?
Getting out in the community.
Current obsession?
Sushi.
If you could know the answer to any question, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. How long will I live?
What's the biggest word you know?
Supercalifragilistic.
What's your most prized possession?
My car.
Hot weather game or cold weather game?
Cold.
If you weren't an NFL player, what would you be doing?
Coaching.
How would you celebrate a Super Bowl win?
Probably eating ice cream.
What superpower would you want?
To fly.
What's your cell phone wallpaper?
It's Michael Jackson as a teenager.
What's your favorite Michael Jackson song?
Beat It.
Rate your drip on a scale of 1 to 10.
10.
Happiest moment of your life?
signing to the Detroit Lions.
Favorite TD celebration?
Hand the ball to the ref. The humbleness behind it, just acting like you've been there before. It's tough for me to say that because I'm sure my first touchdown in Detroit, I'm going to do something crazy. What's up, more? What's up, Motor City? Greg Dortch.
All right. So if you didn't hear it, he's the torch. Now do you guys remember when I wrote up that play and I called it the torch, and it was with Kyle Pitts. And I was looking for my article, and I don't know where the hell my article went, but it's in there. I don't know why I don't see it. I hope I didn't accidentally delete it or something stupid. But I wrote up this big, long play called the torch. And it was kicking everybody out into 5 wides. Oh, that's disappointing. I'm going to have to search for it now. I'm sure I've got a copy of it somewhere. But you guys remember, I called it the torch because, you just can't touch this offense with another, electric tight end on this team. And I'll just be totally real with y'all. Like, I am not out of the mindset yet that the Lions don't draft Kenan Sadiq if he's available in the first round. I know that would completely demoralize portions of this fan base, but you have to look at it from the other angle too. Like, he is a willing blocker. I think that he can get better at the next level. He's not perfect, but I think he can get better. But man, you can't replace that speed. I mean, you're looking at a 6'4", wide receiver, basically. He's almost like Calvin Johnson. Matter of fact, I call him the Calvin Johnson of the tight end position. He's going to be fun to watch. I know he's got some more development left in front of him. A lot more development left in front of him, but you can't replace speed and the ability to catch the football the way he does, the way he contorts his body. I would not be mad at the signing. If it was over Emmanuel McNeil-Warren or Caden Proctor, I probably would be. But we'll see what happens, man. Maybe the Lions end up with 2 first-round picks. Supposed to be McCreary.
This is Roger McCreary.
What's up, Motor City?
Come on.
This is Roger McCreary. About to do the 2-minute drill. Answer as many questions as I can.
Player you model your game after?
Trey White.
What's your nickname?
Raj.
Thing you're most looking forward to about Detroit?
The stadium.
Favorite cheat meal?
Baked beans.
One person you dream of meeting?
Kevin Hart.
Do you have a hidden talent?
I can bowl a little bit.
Best prank you've ever pulled off?
Slapping somebody with a peanut butter jelly sandwich.
Can you explain what happened there?
Caught him off guard, getting her breakfast. It's a lot of them. I ain't gonna get into it.
What was your high school mascot?
Lions.
What's your karaoke song?
Karaoke song. I would go The Weeknd or Quentin.
Actor who played you in a movie?
Kevin Hart.
Favorite movie?
Now You See Me.
What's your favorite video game?
Conquer.
What's your most prized possession?
Prize position, my bowling ball.
A quote you live by?
What I live by, with man is impossible, but with God all things are possible.
If you could have any talent outside of football, what would it be?
Dancing.
What non-flag football Olympic sport do you think you'd have the best chance to qualify in?
Skiing.
What music do you listen to pregame?
Young boy.
What would be your walkout song?
Meek Mill, Dreams and Nightmare.
Happiest moment of your life?
Having a kid.
What superpower would you want?
Read people's minds.
What's the biggest word you know?
Ooh. Intoxication. I'm from Mexico, so I don't even know.
What animal describes your style of play best?
I said cheetah.
A guilty pleasure song?
My song Know What You Did in the Dark, yep.
What's your pregame meal and why?
Baked beans, family barbecue, yeah. My grandma, she's great at it. It was always a thing, full plate, sugar right on the side. I have a whole pot to myself, and everybody else they share the pot. But me, I got one pot to me. When I got to Auburn, I ate it one time, and I had a great game. And ever since then, that always been my style. This is Roger McCreary, about to do the.
Oh, that's hilarious. Most prized possession was a bowling ball. Like I I haven't heard Roger McCreary, excuse me, talk a whole lot other than his press conference. He's goofy, isn't he? He's goofy. Like, he's got that good energy. So now, again, you start to see, the good energy vibes that the Lions are bringing in, man. They're bringing in guys that just have the right model of humanity to them. You got a human side of the game. These guys have to be able to have fun in the locker room. They have to be able to be a little bit lighter and still get after it, right? I think that when you watch teams that are having fun and they're winning, well, that infectious attitude that just gets into everybody I believe helps them win a little bit more. If you're good at what you're doing and you can have fun at it, man, that just makes everything better. It kind of took me sideways there with the baked beans and then the sugar. Like, that's not a typical NFL athlete meal. Like, baked beans is so loaded with, which, pivot for a second, I will never eat high fructose syrup ever again. Anything that I ever see it in, I will never eat it, drink it, nothing. I just learned some stuff yesterday about it. All I'll tell you is go look up what happened between 1966 and 1967 and how Lyndon B. Johnson needed some money for the war, and then see what happened with the corn farmers. I'm just saying, going out on a limb here, I learned some stuff. And I've always tried to stay away from that stuff anyway, but being a cancer survivor, I try to do a lot more with how I eat and things that I drink. And I just learned something about that stuff that I don't even know how it's allowed to be in our food. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, back to McCreary. Look, love the dude. I think he's funny, and I think that he's going to be a good football player for us. I see Robbie put in there that he's a slot. Yeah, he'll be good in the nickel, box safety, but in the nickel, he'll be great there. But Christian Izine is someone that I think is going to step into that slot role right away. You're probably going to see McCreary out on the boundary a little bit too. He does both. And the boundary is kind of what I'm excited about. Like, what is he going to be able to help us, do there, and what matchups may be better for him? I think it's going to be tough to push TA if TA's healthy, and if TA's playing well, it's going to be tough to push that length. But McCreary is a vet, and he has not shied away from anybody, and he's made some big time plays, just like this one.
That is a big-time stop by that defense.
Or this one.
That's a big-time play.
There we go. Who's next? Oh, the JMO one. How many JMOs can you count? That laugh was crazy.
Christian Izzy in here. We're going to attempt a 2-minute drill. See how many questions I can answer. 3, 2, 1.
Player you model your game after.
That's tough. Bob Sanders.
Favorite gym exercise.
Pull downs.
Album with no skips.
No skips. Whew. Young Thug, Slime Season 2.
Favorite video game of all time.
Call of Duty, Black Ops 1.
Most used app on your phone.
Peloton.
Current obsession.
Maria Tacos.
Happiest moment of your life.
My daughter's birth.
What would be your walkout song?
Young Thug, Hercules.
What animal best describes your style of play?
Lion.
Name something you bring on every road game.
Face wash.
Guilty pleasure song.
What's this new Sabrina Carpenter? I don't know the name of the song, but she's dope.
What Naruto character would you most identify with?
Gara.
Thing you're most looking forward to about Detroit?
The fans.
Favorite sport to watch?
Basketball.
Best recess activity?
Still a bacon.
Favorite show growing up?
Teletubbies.
Celebrity crush as a kid?
Ariana Grande.
Who would play you in a movie?
My best friend, Latron.
If you were an NFL player, what would you be doing?
I'll be a professional tennis player.
Best fighter of all time?
Israel Adesanya.
One person you dream of meeting?
LeBron.
How many push-ups can you do in a row?
Probably 100.
How would you celebrate a Super Bowl win?
Cliche Disney.
Do you collect anything?
Yeah, I do. I used to collect Villa waivers. I used to collect those boxes for no reason. 2013, I was in New York and we had Hurricane Sandy. We had to evacuate our home, and all I remember was my mom. She had a bunch of snacks in the closet. So I ate those for about a month straight, and I just got so addicted. I used to just collect the boxes to see how many I ate. I got to like 100 something in a month. Hey, what's going on, Christian Izzy?
That's funny, man. I like those Nilla wafers too, man. They're pretty good. Yeah. So Raw B. Yeah. Quite simply, I probably watch more film than everybody in this chat combined. But Roger McCreary plays both boundary and slot. Primary usage in the slot or in the nickel, but he also plays the boundary. And depending on what the sub package is, he'll be on the boundary. He will go outside. He plays inside, outside. I'm not sure what you're reading, but yeah, you definitely have to watch a lot of film. And I watched, I don't know, probably 2 hours on him so far this last week. And I learned a lot more about him than I think what a lot of people are talking about. All they see is the nickel stuff, right? All they see is the slot work, the inside slot work. But I see more impressive work by him when he's on the outside, and he's actually able to stay in phase and mirror guys. He's not the longest guy, so it's going to be tough for him to break at the catch point. He's not going to be bodying up a DK Metcalf or anything like that. But when you get into a 2x2 set and they're wide, he has to go to the boundary. And when he goes to the boundary, that's where I see some of his best work. Is in the exchange and when he's staying in phase, and then he's tracking these guys all the way down. He stays hip to hip, and so he can do either. I don't think he's going to be outside corner 2 or 1 for us, but I think in a pinch, if we lose somebody, he's probably going to be the first one out there on the boundary. So right now, I mean, all we have is. I guess we have Rocky Sin too, so he'd probably be the first one out there. He'd probably be the third one then. Where's his stats at? Christian Izzian, he's another one that is also nickel slot. So if those two are going to fight for it, I think that Izine, I always say Izine, I think that he's going to probably edge him out right away, but I don't know, man. Both these guys are really good, and they both have plenty of experience. I'm trying to pull up his stuff. One sec here. Okay, so last year for McCreary, I'll pull up Izine too. But last year for McCreary, he had about 290 reps at slot. And then he had about 80, 108, about 108 at wide corner, left and right wide corner. And then, yeah, that's about it. I think when you combine those two, you get all of his snaps for the season, 503 snaps. So the rest of it came on kick and punt coverage. So he goes to the boundary. It's not his primary, but he goes to the boundary. 2024, kind of much of the same. If it will move. Come on. There it goes. 2024, he played a lot more on the inside. Who was he with in 24? Tennessee. With Tennessee, played a lot more on the inside, and he also played a little bit of free safety, a lot less wide corner, left or right corner, a lot less in 2024. He might have played his most in 25 out wide. This is not wanting to move.
Larry Borum here, offensive lineman.
Oh, you got to wait, Larry. I'm not done yet. Okay, 2023, he actually played his most. So in 2023, about 218 snaps out on the wide side, both left and right. He also played a little bit of free safety, just a handful of snaps. More than likely, we're talking scheme dependent, dime packages, bigger nickel packages, most likely dime packages. 218 on the wide, 585 out or in the slot. So out of about 700 and call it 800 snaps, he played about 25% of them out wide. 2022, he had 662 snaps out wide, only 367 on the inside. 2022 was a big year for him. He had a great season that year. Out of 1,213 snaps, ignoring special teams, over 65% of his snaps were out wide. In 2022 was his rookie year. So every year he's played out wide. I'd say last year, 2022 and 2023 were his years that he played the majority or played a lot more on the outside. So you got to go back to 2022 to watch a lot of his film, but you'll find some film in every year if you go to NFL Pro and check it out. I think that he's going to be mixed usage for the Lions. And then Izine, so to talk about Izine for a minute, and as far as where he lines up the most, he's box safety and I spell his name wrong. Slot. Why is it saying no players found? We'll do Larry Borum here in just one sec. All right, so Izine, I like to call him Izine for some reason. Man, the little thing is just not moving. Last year was a light year for him. He only had 346 snaps. Primary slot, 45. Box, 57. Free safety, 63. So he had his most snaps at free safety, which is interesting. I had to be some injuries. I would see him more probably as a strong safety than a free safety, but definitely can play safety. 2024. What is wrong with his slider? It just won't move. He played in the box 135, slot 205, wide corner 33, free safety again 308. So between box and slot, it was about 50-50 between box, slot, and free safety. So 340 inside and 308 free safety. 2023. Come on. 657 in the slot. So primary slot work for him. And then 57 in the box. Wide corner only 33 times and only 7 snaps at free safety. And that was it. That was his rookie year. So primary, I would say slot, but he's also free safety on a large majority of his, or a large amount, not majority, of his snaps as well. So that versatility, man, for both of these guys, you can kind of plug them and play them, at multiple positions. And I think that speaks again to what Brad Holmes tries to bring in, what he tries to, develop on this team is not having any glaring holes anywhere.
Hey, what's going on? Christian Izien.
Larry Borum here, offensive lineman. Excited to be back home. About to take a 2-minute drill, see how many answers I can get right in 2 minutes. Let's do it.
Favorite show growing up?
Rugrats.
What animal best describes your style of play?
Lion.
Thing you're most looking forward to about returning to Michigan?
Being home with family.
One person you dream of meeting?
Pass.
Do you collect anything?
Golf balls.
One word to describe your game?
Physical.
Celebrity crush as a kid?
Don't have one pass.
Favorite album of all time?
Carter 3.
Favorite movie?
Friday.
What age did you start playing football?
Freshman year of high school.
What fictional character would make a great offensive lineman?
The Hulk.
Current obsession?
Golf.
What's the biggest word you know?
Pass.
When was the last time you laughed really hard?
Friday this morning.
How would you celebrate a Super Bowl win?
Doing anything and everything.
If you could have any talent outside of football, what would it be?
Be really good at golf.
What emoji do you use the most?
Laughing emoji.
Guilty pleasure song?
Pass.
Genie gives you one wish. What do you wish for?
Pass. I'm taking too long.
Favorite moment of your career so far?
Probably played Cleveland last year, and I ended up with the ball somehow.
Favorite video game of all time?
2K.
Do you prefer hot weather or cold weather games?
Hot.
If you could see any musician perform, dead or alive, who would it be?
Ooh. Say Michael Jackson.
Favorite sports jersey of all time?
Pass.
Something you bring on every road game?
Headphones.
Biggest pet peeve?
Being late.
What non-flag football Olympic sport do you think you'd have the best chance to qualify in?
Table tennis.
If you could time travel, would you rather go to the future or the past?
Future.
Who's your biggest inspiration?
My mother.
Most used app on your phone?
You said most of the app? TikTok.
What superpower would you want?
Read minds.
First job you ever worked?
At Leo's Coney Island. My mom was a waitress for the longest, for like almost upwards of 20 years. So I was like a busboy coming in, just doing little things. Larry Borum here, offensive lineman. Excited to be back home.
I don't know, man. I love this guy's energy too. He's just infectious, and I love his answers. He wants to be great at golf. Like, that's such a hard sport to play. I used to love playing golf back in the day. But again, I think that you guys are starting to see what it is that the Lions are bringing in, right? I mean, the type of players, these guys are all great character. They're all smiles, they're joking, they're having fun, but then they're all business too. Last one we'll do here is Cade Mays.
I'm Cade Mays. I'm doing the 2-minute drill. Gonna see how many questions I can answer in 2 minutes.
How would your teammates describe you?
Hardworking.
Guilty pleasure song?
Ooh, anything Olivia Dean.
Favorite sports jersey of all time?
Albert Pujols jersey.
One person you dream of meeting?
LeBron James.
Favorite moment of your career so far?
Going to the playoffs.
Thing you're most looking forward to in Detroit?
Just getting to know my teammates.
Favorite cheat meal?
Ooh, steak.
If you know the answer to any question, what would it be?
Pass.
One thing you do before.
How is steak a cheat meal? It's not a cheat meal. Like that should be an every day, or every other day kind of a meal for a football player, man. You need that protein.
Every game.
Hydrate.
What non-flag football Olympic sport do you think you'd have the best chance to qualify in?
Pass.
Something you think is overrated?
Waffles.
What's your cell phone wallpaper?
Picture me holding a turkey.
Do you collect anything?
Turkey rocks.
Do you think you could land a plane in an emergency?
No shot.
When was the last time you laughed really hard?
This morning.
Name another Cade.
Kate Cunningham.
What's the soundtrack to your life?
Life is highway.
Best advice you've received?
Ooh, anything from my mom.
Worst advice you've received?
Ooh. Pass.
Favorite month of the year?
April.
Biggest pet peeve?
Pass.
Current obsession?
Turkey hunting.
Favorite gym exercise?
Bench press.
What's the biggest word you know?
Onomatopoeia.
How would you celebrate a Super Bowl win?
With the boys.
Something you bring on every road game?
Boots.
What's the best meal you can make?
Breakfast.
Favorite childhood athlete?
Kobe.
Rate your drip on a scale of 1 to 10.
Like a 3.
Best center of all time.
Ooh. I don't know. Best O-lineman of all time is Larry Allen. I'd say our play styles are different, but definitely somebody that I model as a human. Just a great dude.
All right. I didn't even think about the music in this. Might be an issue later, but I could just clip all that out. No big deal. The thing that I noticed right away, maybe there's a difference, and I'm not saying, anything negative about the other guys, but I think that there's a big difference between Cade Mays and his quickness versus the other guys. And I say that, and I analyze, watching this video from that perspective, like, how quick-witted are you? And the 2-minute drill, I think what they're trying to do is get these guys obviously to answer quickly. How many questions can they get done in 2 minutes, but maybe as accurate, I guess, as without giving just some BS answer. And he was pretty quick. I think he might have been one of the quicker guys to go through this exercise. I haven't seen if there's any other ones. Let me see if there is. Oh, there's Isaiah Pacheco. Maybe we should do his too. We will, because that is the last one. That is the last one on here. Let's do his too. But anyway, I feel like we got to watch Pacheco now, but I think Cade Mays might have been the more quick-witted one, getting those answers off pretty quickly. So I think that speaks volumes to, the center position. You got to be smart. You have to be quick. You have to be able to diagnose quickly and get your quarterback in the right position, get your offensive line in the right position, right? So here we go. Let's listen to him. Isaiah Pacheco.
Isaiah Pacheco here. We're going to do a 2-minute drill. Let's get to it.
How would you describe your running style?
Angry, fast, physical.
Why do they call you Pop?
I hit hard.
Thing you're most looking forward to about Detroit?
Food.
Happiest moment of your life?
Today.
What animal best describes your style of play?
Tasmanian devil.
What will you live by?
Win the day.
What would be your walkout song?
Demon home.
Favorite childhood athlete?
Damian Thompson.
Favorite way to make a defender miss?
Juke move.
Name something overrated.
The Whey.
What fictional character would make a great running back?
Next.
How many push-ups can you do in a row?
60.
What's your go-to first down celebration? Guilty pleasure song?
None.
What former player do you model your game after?
Adrian Peterson.
Why do you wear the number 10?
It was my freshman year number.
What song do you have completely memorized?
Nights like this will never be the same. That's my song, by the way. I'm gonna put you on.
Celebrity crush as a kid?
Didn't have one.
Best fighter of all time?
Bruce Lee.
If you could know the answer to any question, what would it be?
Are you home?
Best advice you've ever received?
Keep winning.
Worst advice you've ever received?
You suck.
What's your cell phone wallpaper?
What's on my cell phone paper?
Yeah, what's your cell phone wallpaper?
My niece.
Album with no skips?
Playboy Cardi.
What superpower would you want?
To fly.
One thing you do before every game?
Pray.
Genie grants you one wish, what do you wish for?
For all my family and friends to have a safe, healthy day.
What's 2 minutes?
Okay, a little bit interesting, more interesting, I guess. I love one answer out of here, and did not expect this at all. Like, I would have expected, Mike Tyson or, some sort of an answer along those lines. Bruce Lee, best fighter of all time. And, man, he ain't lying, right? Bruce Lee. Love that answer. Isaiah Pacheco. Thank you for 2 minutes. All the guys, man. Great work. Love it. I can't wait till we get inside the den, man. I'm hoping that they actually do the damn thing this year and they get it out on time. And the first episode's usually right after the draft. So I'm excited about that one. I think we're going to have a fun draft. I'm still not for sure if I'm going to the draft or not this year. I want to, but after getting sick for a couple of weeks, I mean, I was bad. I don't know if I want to go right back into that whole mess of people and potentially get sick again. That's just not good. Not good for me. What else is up on the rest of the day? We did a 2-minute drill. We got the Tim Twentyman, I believe. And we did the Mike Payton thing. We did Kirby. We did Tim Twentyman. All right, so the Believe Network. Great interview. Great interview of Tim Twentyman. How long is this thing? It's 34 minutes. That's a long time. Let me see. Let me do this. Let's I'm not going to show it. I want to listen to a couple of answers. I'll put their picture up on the screen though. I'll fast forward. We'll skip around for a minute. Normally I clip this stuff out so that we don't have to go through it this way, but whatever. It's just a lazy Monday today, man. Let's do this. Make it all up on the fly here. All right, here we go. Like I said, I'm going to skip around a little bit. Looks like I need to adjust this. And we're going to listen to what Tim Twentyman, Glover Quinn, and Trevor Thompson have to say here about the Lions' offseason so far. Here we go.
Yeah. Tim, give me some inside scoop, man. What is the plan? I know we've paid a lot of our guys. But we've gotten rid of a lot of our glue guys. David Montgomery, Alex Anzalone, Khalif Raymond. Those are the glue guys of the team. How are they trying to rebuild that?
Well, it's some of the young guys have to step up, Glove. You can have glue guys, and those guys can be your guys, like a Khalif, like an Alex that you talked about. But at some point, those guys get to a salary point when you've got other stars and you've got other young guys that you mentioned that they've got to pay, and they have paid. And I think what the Lions are looking at is, look, we've got 4, 5, 6 all-pro caliber players on this team that are all 26 years or younger. And so some of them have already been paid. Some of them are going to get paid. And that's the foundation. That's the core. That's what Brad Holmes talked about afterward. He said, look, I'm going to build around the core guys. And so when you're going to do that and you identify those guys, the Amon-Ra St. Brown's, Penei Sewell, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, who's going to come due, Jack Campbell's going to come due, Sam Laporte is going to come due. All that money's coming due. And so now you're looking at ways to free up some of that money. And what you say is, look, some other guys have to step up and be those glue guys. Some guys are going to have to step up into roles. Malcolm Rodriguez, who has started 25 games in this year, he's going to have to step in and play that will spot and try to take over and be one of those glue guys. It's your time now, young guy. You've been in the league long enough. Now you have to step into that role, a lot like Alex wasn't a starter, wasn't a premier player in this league right away. If you remember his time in New Orleans, was a guy like Malcolm, a spot starter, and then he got his opportunity here in Detroit, and then he became what he became. At some point, Glove, you need young guys to step into those spots and be those kind of guys. Isaac Tesla now has to be your third guy for Khalif Raymond, right? He's got to give you something at just some point. You've been in this league and you've seen some young guys come through. I think Darius Slay is probably a great example when you were here, right? There were some veteran guys in front of Darius. And then it became a point where, look, Darius, you're a second-round pick. You got to be that guy. And then you get an opportunity and he becomes that guy. And I just think, Glove, this team is at that point where they need some of those young guys now to step into those roles, take big steps forward, and be those new glue pieces for the next, transition of this football team. And I just think that's the philosophy. They've got their core pieces. They've identified who they are. They're going to put the money toward that. And now it's about finding, veterans that can step in and contribute and young guys to step up and fill roles.
Man, it seems like all of their young guys are like big money guys. Like when I think about it, I mean, you think about the guys that aren't paid. Terrion Arnold, he's a first-round cornerback. Brian Branch, he's not paid. Jahmyr Gibbs, those guys, those not really your glue guys. Those are your superstars.
Right.
In a sense. Like, I just don't know how they can pay everybody.
I think some of the mechanisms are going to have to start to be in place, and look, Brad has always been a general manager that has looked out for his guys, I think, for the most part, and tried to take care of his guys, right? Draft, develop, and pay. And that's been the philosophy. But, you've got mechanisms in place as a team. You've got the franchise tag. You've got the transition tag. Look, they haven't used those things in a long, long time, in a decade. And I think this roster's just at a point now. And look, I know Globe players hate those kind of things, but at some point, your roster's now to a point, and you've got so many good young players that have been paid or you have to pay, that the transition tag and the franchise tag, I think we're going to start to see those mechanisms come in place here the next couple off seasons.
So, Tim, you talk about the money being spent right now, and that's all well and good, but you still have to bring players on because you expect to be a competitive team. Right now, I'm looking at FanDuel. The Lions are the odds-on favorite on FanDuel, plus 160 to win the NFC North. So the expectation is still going to be there. So you have to bring guys in order to keep this thing at a certain level. So we saw Jared Goff give some money back, rework his contract in order to make some things happen. Do you see anybody else doing the same thing, restructuring the contract, freeing up a little money so they can pursue the type of guys they're going to need to maintain that standard?
All right, let's stop it there for just a moment. Talking about the glue guys. Exactly what I was talking about this morning, too. Partially because I heard this yesterday on this podcast, and I started thinking about it. Like, yeah, he's absolutely right. You have a young nucleus, young core, that some of these guys are going to have to step up. And even some of the guys that you're bringing in are going to have to step up into a much bigger role. And that's just what it's going to take to win this year. You're going to have to step up into a much bigger role. It's not that we don't have these guys. We do. But when you have, Jared, here, I'll just write them all out. Jared, Panay, Amon-Ra, Kirby, to whatever extent he is. Who else was paid? Kirby, Amon-Ra, Ali McNeil, Aiden. So there's at least 6 guys that have max deals. You're about to have Jack and Jahmyr. You also have Jameson Williams, who was just paid. But you have Jack, Jahmyr, Laporta, and Branch, all about to get paid. But you have at least 7, I think I'm forgetting a name in there, but at least 7 that have all been paid on these max deals. Like that's your tight core, right? It's your main core. Then you have the surrounding guys that also develop the rest of your core, right? Like, for instance, if you go outside of those guys, who's next? Well, Laporte or Tesla in his second year. Last year, I think he overachieved for what a lot of fans thought he was going to be. Hopefully that settled down the narrative drivers that Tesla is actually a really good receiver, and he's only going to grow into his second season. He's only going to get better, and he's going to get a lot more targets this year. But he's also going to have to help grow, into that next level of a glue guy, right, and become, the rest of that core. But you're also asking guys like Tate Ratledge to step up, right, and to be part of the leadership group. You got guys like Levi Onwuzurike, who's been around for a very long time. It's not so much that he's just a glue guy, but he's part of the leadership group too. Someone that fights and scraps and claws. Tyleik Williams, he's part of that young core. So you've got your older vet core, and then you have that new younger core. Malcolm Rodriguez, absolutely part of that core nucleus. Yeah, he doesn't have a max deal, but this guy's a hustler. He's someone that is worked his his way into the NFL by just outworking everybody, setting that example. DJ Reed, someone that we brought in last year, he's part of the new, vet core, if you will. And so he's someone that has to lead from the front. There's plenty of guys that are on this team that are part of the developed core, the guys that we brought in for free agency that are part of the core, and then the younger guys that, are starting to develop into their second or third season. We have plenty of guys on this team. And I think the number is close to 28 guys that have been around this team now for several seasons. That's a big core of guys that you have not gotten rid of. And so I think that sets a very hard spike into the ground to say, look, we have the guys to compete. And we have the guys that can lead the rest of the guys we bring in. We don't necessarily need the highest paid guys in the world. But Tim is actually, he's spot on with what he's saying. So let's continue listening to what these guys, now they're talking about. Let's hear what they're talking about next.
There's still an opportunity. I think with Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown are probably the two that could get done if Brad decides that there's an opportunity and he needs the money. I think they have the money available right now with what Jared did to do what they already did in free agency, maybe get two more guys and then take care of the cap. Or take care of the draft, I think they're still going to need some money for the regular season, especially when injuries hit. So I could see potentially one more of those things getting done. But if not, they have the money right now that they need to get themselves through the season. But I still think they need to add, a piece or two in free agency. I think probably defensive end, we can probably both agree that there needs to be an addition there. Right now you've got Hutch and you've got Ahmed Hassanin. Those are your two edge rushers at this point. I think you look at some guys out there, AJ Epineza, Cam Jordan, obviously, who Dan Campbell's familiar with. There's a Joey Bosa out there, and I don't know if they have the money, for a Cam or a Joey. If they get to a point where maybe something could fall into place there, that I think is when maybe you could try to free up some more money. But I think they're still going to get an edge rusher. And then this draft is probably the deepest edge rushing draft I've seen in a decade. I think you're going to get guys in this draft into the fourth round that are going to be able to help people. You talk to any of the draft analysts out there and they say edge rusher and receiver is so deep in this draft. And so for a Lions fan, you have to feel pretty good. You've got obviously the first, the second, and 2 fourths. I think if they get a veteran guy like a Cam Jordan or somebody else in here, and then you draft a guy, all of a sudden that position feels a little bit better. And I think as a whole, you feel pretty good about some of the depth that they've added in free agency, but they still obviously have to do that piece on the edge of their defensive line.
Okay, so clearly this was recorded, you would think, before Clark, before Wanham. Now it came out a day ago. And I don't know if they put in their notes when it was recorded. I don't think they do. I don't see it. Okay. Yeah, they don't. So it had to be just based on that answer alone. Because Wanham wasn't in the building, then you're thinking of the, Bosa or Jordan. But at any rate, yeah, I think those are the wrong answers anyway. But again, needing more money would only mean that you need to go out and sign bigger free agents, which there isn't a whole lot of those left. So I think freeing up money would only be able to re-sign guys that you need to, get contracts done with. And I don't know that that's really a necessary option right now, or if it's even really needed. Maybe you're picking up the 5th-year option. You should have, hopefully some money set aside for that. They're going to need it. They can sign their rookies. And you're going to want some money for the rest of the season, which I think Tim said that, but those are all things that I've been saying, right? Everything Tim just said are all things that I've been saying for weeks now. So like I said, I'm glad to finally hear somebody else. I don't want to say reverberating. Tim has been covering the Lions for a very long time. He knows this team inside and out. But we see eye to eye on how these things are, unfolding in front of our eyes and how things have been going for the Lions over the last many seasons now. So I'm glad to see that. that there's other people out there that actually believe it. Because believe it or not, like even though Tim works for the Lions, writes for the Lions, covers the Lions, he still also has his own opinions, right? He still has his own idea of things. And I mean, just by mentioning, those two names with Cam Jordan or, the other guy, like, look, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, those are the two biggest names left, but I mean, the last time we signed a guy over 36 years old was Alu, right? Or Alu, or I don't remember how you say his last name, but yeah, he was like 36 years old defensive tackle that we brought in, or defensive end tackle that we brought in. He played okay, but it wasn't great, and look, I don't think that Cam Jordan's in that same vessel, if you will. I think he's a much better player, but I mean, at 37 years old, I mean, at any moment, something's going to snap, more than likely. So I would say I'm less likely that those things are going to get done. Let's continue on. I'm going to speed this up 10% though. And it doesn't change it too much, but at least 10% helps.
Depth in free agency. I went over this with Glover last week. A couple of guys have been added since then, but Teddy Bridgewater, Larry Borum, you got Cade Mays at center, Tyler Conklin recently signed, Isaiah Pacheco, Roger McCreary recently, Juice Scruggs moves on and moved here in the trade, but just those kinds of additions. Of all of those, which do you think is most important? And those don't sound like the types of names that replace the guys that left. So Glover and I talked about this, taking steps back. How do you, again, those guys, how are they help moving you forward?
Yeah, I think Cade Mays is the one that jumps out to me. I think that's where you took a step forward. I think when you look at him and his age and his production versus what you got from Graham Glasgow last year, I think that's an obvious, step forward. Obviously, the team thought so too with a 3-year contract for him. Hasn't allowed a sack in 2 years. I think he's still an ascending player. I think that one probably helps you out immediately. And then when you look at some of the other guys, I mean, you mentioned Borum, for example. There's a guy that, do you feel great if he's your right tackle? I think he can step in, and he's done that. He's played right and left tackle. Do you feel better about that, guys, if he's your swing tackle? Is he an upgrade over Dan Skipper? And look, I love Dan Skipper. I think he's going to do a great job on that coaching staff. But I think when you look at just the age, athletic ability, and stuff like that, well, he steps in and he's your swing tackle and spot starter. You feel really good about that. And so let's say you go get a tackle at 17, or you get one in the second round that you really feel good about. Now you've got a young tackle that you like, that you think you can start. And then you've got a Borum, a guy who can be your swing tackle and step in and start. Are you better off than you were before? I think that's an argument, and a fair one. And so, some of these guys, you look at Conklin. Conklin caught at least 50 passes in 21, 22, 23, 24, went into a bad situation with the Chargers. But if you're talking about a second, third tight end, that's some production there. I mean, that's a guy who just recently, 4 straight years, had at least 50 catches. If he's your number 3 tight end, do you feel good about that situation? So I just think with where this team has been, where the injuries are, and we talked about it earlier, they've got their guys, their core pieces they're building around. Now it's about building that depth. When you lose a Laporta, when you lose a Brock Wright, and you're down to the 3rd, 4th, 5th tight end at the end of the year in really important games, having a guy like Conklin who's got a history of catching 50, 60 balls as your number 3 tight end, you feel better about that. So I think those are the moves, and that's the way you have to look at free agency is filling some of that depth. Everybody wants star players, right? And everybody wants that top free agent, that big money guy. I want to ask you both a question. How many teams in this league have 2 franchise caliber, really high paid edge guys? 2 of them. Like if the Lions were to have a Hutchinson and Max Crosby, how many teams have that?
Not where you build it. Yeah, it's not where you build it.
Right? You got one guy, right? And you try to fill that other spot with a young guy. He steps in, he's great, and you have that tandem that's awesome. A second tier free agent guy. You can't pay 2 edges in this league. It's just that's how the salary cap goes, especially when you have a quarterback who's got a $60 million plus cap hit. And so I just think it's those things. They're building this through their core, and they're trying to get those pieces to build that depth of where if injuries happen, which has been the story of the last 2 seasons, even when they were 15-2, they lost that Washington game because they got decimated by injury. They were playing guys off the street. So,
all right, quick pause here. I'm exactly, obviously, in line. Hold on one sec. I'm exactly in line, obviously, with what Tim Twentyman is saying here, because he asked the question that I have yet to hear from anybody else in media, And he asked the question to a former football player, Glover Quinn, former Detroit Lion, Glover Quinn. How many teams have two edge getting paid high dollar on the same team? 0. So I'm glad he finally said it. And I'm glad that he asked it to somebody that was a former teammate, right? And someone that understands how this stuff works, because you're hearing it from guys that play the game. You're hearing it from guys that have been covering the game for 20 plus years. So it validates, again, all of the information that I've been trying to explain to people, or all the information I've been giving and all the things that I've been trying to explain to people, like it just doesn't exist. Oh, hold on, guys. Sorry about that. My dog's legs do not work, so sometimes he gets stuck on the steps. I had to go rescue him. But anyway, it just validates all the things that I've been trying to explain to people for a long time, that that it just doesn't exist, right? And we've got to stop thinking that you can just go out and spend massive amounts of money on things that will hurt your team in the long run. Doesn't help your team. And if you think that it can just happen for one season, that's even less so, that it can happen in just, one season. You can just go all in. I'll reference the Packers again, right? How did that go for them? Tell me another team that went out and spent, 30, 40, 50 million dollars on just one player, not a quarterback, and they go out and win a Super Bowl. Nobody. It doesn't exist. And the other side of that is, what are you going to do the next season now that you've got this big, giant, bloated contract? And if you made the trade, you don't have any way to go out and draft somebody to replace that person or to replace that player. And now you don't have the money to do anything in free agency. You're just going to kill your team slowly or quickly, and it can all blow up, and we can be right back to where we were in 2020, going into 2021 with negative $84 million cap hits or dead cap hits, right? And no money whatsoever to do anything with. Or you can operate like the Patriots or the Seahawks that draft well. Patriots didn't, but they saved all their money because they didn't go out and spend lavishly. They made moves for about 4 years, and then they just went all in. That can work, but hardly ever. And then the next season, their whole team gets broken up. That doesn't create continuity, and it's even lesser of an opportunity for you to go back to the playoffs, to go back to a Super Bowl, if you don't have the same type of players that you had the year before. You can't just have 25% roster attrition every year, or 35% is probably more like it, and expect to be able to compete. Because now you have to have all these guys blend with each other, learn the scheme and everything. It's not easy. They also talk about, restructuring still. I think we kind of talked about that. Let's hear what they say next.
You bring in these free agents that are your number 2, your number 3 guy. And if you're in that situation again, boy, you feel pretty good about that guy stepping in. I think that's the trajectory that, Brad Holmes took in free agency is really filling the depth, knowing that his core guys, his big money guys, they're already on this roster. He doesn't need to go get them somewhere else. That's his feeling, at least.
I just, like you said, it just seems to me we put so much into those top guys, and when they go down, we're all scratching our heads like, where is the production going to come from? I saw it last year. When I went to training camp last year, I got back on the podcast, and I was like, man, I liked the starters, from the secondary. They had Kirby out there, and Brian, and Terrion, and DJ, and I was like, but after those guys, I'm a little worried about the depth in the secondary.
Yeah, and that's why, a guy like Izine, helps. Christian Izine Jr., he's played safety, he's played nickel. McCreary obviously has had, some success, has played a lot of nickel. So, those are veteran guys, again, not flashy names, right? Not your top tier free agency guys that you look at the list on NFL.com and the top 25, and you're always a Lions fan. You're like, well, I want him and him and him. But the money's not there to do that unless they would have done all those deals and really mortgaged the future. And Brad Holmes isn't about to do that with so many young stars under the age of 27 and 26 on this team. He thinks they could be good for a long time. I tend to agree with him. And they have to build up that depth that you talk about, Glover. So when guys go down, now you've got an Izzy and you've got a McCreary. You've got some guys that have stepped into and played football in this league. And it's about improving the depth. And so I think they've got some proven guys. I think safety is still maybe an area you can look at the draft, especially that I could see them adding a young guy. I do like what Thomas Harper kind of stepped in and I thought did some pretty good things. We still have to see Dan Jackson, their draft pick from last year, who was hurt in training camp. But when you got, Kirby and Brian and Izzian, who's played, some good football in this league, you add one more guy, you start to feel better about the depth. But look, well, and you both know. I mean, there's always going to be a few spots where you're kind of deficient, and that you can't do as much as you want to do. Right now, I think that's along the defensive line, and they've got some work to do there. But I thought they've done a nice job. I think Pacheco, fits that kind of style that they want to do. Physical, right? Still hungry. A guy like David, when he came over here, he was, his team didn't want him. He felt shaded a little bit. Now he's out to prove something and be that, change of pace guy. I like him. It's those kind of pieces that they've added, and Brad's hoping he added enough depth to really make this football team longer or better in the long run when they do suffer some injuries.
See, the Pacheco one, I mean, I just wonder how it's going to play out, because I feel like Gibbs and Montgomery, they were different players, and I don't feel like David Montgomery ever tried to be like Jahmyr Gibbs, and I don't feel like Jahmyr Gibbs ever tried to be like David Montgomery. They were true Sonic and Knuckles in a sense. But I can see Pacheco trying to play like Jahmyr, because I feel like he's one of those type of backs. I don't feel like he's a bigger power guy like a David Montgomery who can just be happy in his lane. I feel like watching Jahmyr closely at practice, watching him closer on film and things like that, I feel like that could probably persuade the way he plays, and they could probably they'll probably be the same guy. So I still feel like they need that. Like, I don't feel like Pacheco is a change of pace. He's the same pace as Jahmyr, or is trying to be. He's probably not as fast, but he's trying to be.
Yeah, he's certainly not as fast. But I'd say this just from watching him. I think he brings a more physical brand of football. I think he'll drop his pads and he doesn't mind delivering a hit. Now Jahmyr doesn't either, but that's not his game. I think there's a little more power to his game than maybe he gets credit for. But is he David Montgomery? No. Obviously not. But I think we're also going to see Jahmyr Gibbs really break out this year. I think you saw it coming last year when the split was 60-40, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's 70-30 this year. I think they expect Jahmyr Gibbs with a better offensive line in front of him to have a breakout year, and they expect him to be, offensive player of the year type of a player. And look, Pacheco knows that. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were pretty honest with Pacheco when he got here, saying, look, Gibbs is our guy. And even Pacheco said he admired Gibbs' game. If you don't know that Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, and Bijan Robinson are the guys in this league now, then you're not paying attention. And so I think he knows the situation he's coming to. I think the Lions were very honest with him, and I think he looks at this as a reclamation project a little bit and a chance maybe to play with a chip on his shoulder, and whatever opportunities he does get, I think like David Montgomery got when he first got here, I think he's looking to take advantage of those, and I think he's going to play the role that the Lions ask him to, and I think that was spelled out to him before he got here.
One of the things.
Okay, there's some great points in there. So, talking about the Pacheco thing, and I think that Glover makes a great point with, okay, so we don't have the two backs that are necessarily diverse, different from each other. Sorry, I've been dealing with hiccups like for the last 30 minutes, man. They're just not going away. So yeah, we bring in Pacheco is kind of the same back. Speed wise, I feel like he's got great speed. I mean, he's not Jahmyr fast, like you just heard them say too. Like, yeah, he's not Jahmyr fast, but he's pretty close. But at the same time, I do believe he runs with a little bit more power behind his pads. And I think he's a little bit, or a lot more, honestly, vicious than a runner than Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm not trying to discredit Jahmyr Gibbs at all, because I do believe Jahmyr has an edge to him. And he will finish forward with his pads. And he will try to get that last hit in before he runs out of bounds. I don't think Gibbs is concerned one iota about taking a hit or giving a hit. But I do believe he plays smart. And running backs that are playing smart are trying to lengthen their career. And by him taking the least amount of hits possible is the right way to do it. But having two guys like Pacheco and Jahmyr Gibbs is not a bad thing. Now, I get that, at Davenport maybe have been the change up to Jahmyr Gibbs' fastball. And he maybe brought a different level of patience and vision. And he does have some torque and some power with those 800-pound squatty legs that I called sledgehammers. He absolutely brings all that to the game. But I'm not going to discredit Pacheco either and say that he can't run with a little bit more power, because it's been on tape. And that speed, I mean, think about it. Teams can't beat speed, right? Defenses struggle with speed. And so now if you bring in Pacheco and I think the offensive philosophy that the Lions are utilizing, and the reason why David Montgomery was not utilized as often, is because the Lions are trying to use speed. David wasn't fast enough to do some of the things that Jahmyr Gibbs can. Jahmyr Gibbs can be used in the slot as a receiver, so could David Montgomery out of the backfield as a good receiver. The difference is now, if you want to bring in Pacheco and put him into the backfield, and you want to rotate Jahmyr Gibbs up to the slot, well, now you have just as much speed behind you as you do with Jahmyr Gibbs up on the line. So this is a totally different element here that I believe the Lions have brought in with Pacheco. The benefits, like I say, the benefits that I'm seeing, at least on paper right now, is that Pacheco can go in and be just as dynamic of a running back as Jahmyr Gibbs. Not to the same extent, but I believe just as dynamic with the speed that he runs with, the ability to catch, the power that I do believe that he runs with a little bit more than maybe Jahmyr Gibbs does. And I think it's true violence, honestly. He's just honestly, he's more, here, I got the perfect word for him. And it's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing that, where did I put it? I just reorganized everything. Right here. This is reckless. I think that Pacheco runs reckless. And not in a bad way. He runs with reckless abandon. Like he's going to go out there and run violent. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to run with finesse and want to win through utilizing the juke and getting to the outside or cutting back to the inside, finding that hole and winning with finesse and speed. Pacheco will absolutely win with violence and try to do something, lower that shoulder or, throw out the stiff arm and then try to bounce and spin off of you to then create the finesse move and then gain another 3, 4, 5, or 10 yards. Both of them have a play in this offense, but they're also, or a different style of play in this offense, but I think it's also kind of the same. So it's not a bad thing that you're going to utilize a little bit more speed to what David Montgomery couldn't do with the speed part. But David brought a totally different philosophy too. So, and it was also needed. The thing that I still see though is the draft. Like this draft is loaded with a couple of guys in each round that the Lions are going to have a shot at. If Mike Washington truly slips, and I don't know how he would slip, honestly, but my goodness, if he really does end up in the 4th round, he'll be a Detroit Lion. If the Lions are close, they're going to move up and get him. And I believe that because he has the weight, the size, the speed, clearly. He's faster than Gibbs. And he runs with power. To have both of those things in the same body, my God, that could add such an element to this team. But there's some other guys. There's some other backs like Singleton. I mean, even Jadarian Price, that, he runs with some good power and finesse. There's a power back in this draft that the Lions could go and grab. And I think that they will. I'm not settled on Jacob Sailors. I'm not settled on Sione Vaki. I think that they're going to go find another back in this draft to be the future. Because why replace Isaiah Pacheco next year? If that's the case, then maybe they re-sign him. But he's a number 2. He's never going to get big money again, not in Detroit. And so if he has a good season and then another team wants to take a crack at it, yeah, he's going to double or triple up his salary somewhere else, and he'll take that. So I expect the Lions to draft another running back. And if you're looking for that David Montgomery style, a little bit more power, it's in this draft. So the Pacheco's the initial answer to give Jahmyr Gibbs rest. It's also the identical answer to Gibbs to a degree, to allow the offense to do what it can do with Gibbs and do the same thing with Pacheco in the game. Let's listen to what else I had to say.
That you brought up last week too, GQ, was just the difference in carries and the number of touches that you get throughout a game and how that might affect a Jahmyr Gibbs. And running between the tackles really isn't his game, how much it might wear him down over the course of the season to take more carries. Just wondering where you sit on that, Tim, and if Glover, if you want to expand on that thought again.
Well, no, I would just. Oh, you got it. Tim.
No, go ahead, Glove. Go ahead, Glove.
No, I was just saying, when you're splitting things with someone, you're not getting all of it. I mean, we saw him take on a heavier load last year, but now that you've gotten rid of David Montgomery, you're basically telling him we're giving you the keys. Now we got you a backup, driver, but for the most part, you got the keys. And if we're going on the long road trip, you got the keys. You know what I'm saying? So you can't get tired, not for very long.
No, and it's a good point. But, I look back to the end of, I think it was the 2024 season, right? Remember when David hurt his knee those last 4 or 5 games of the year, I think it was. And Trev, I don't know if you're sitting right by a computer and have those stats available with Jahmyr Gibbs at the end of the 2024 season. But I'm pretty sure that he went 4 or 5 games straight there with at least 20 to 25 carries. Might have gotten 30 in a game. I could be wrong. It could be right under. But I think it was that stretch when he had 25 carries every single game, and I think he rushed for at least 100 yards in all those games. I think it was close to 700 yards in 5 games when he had to carry the load there at the end of the season. And that was when the first time that I thought, okay, now is that a whole season like you're talking about, Glove? It's not. That's a pretty small sample size there. But that was, a consistent every day. You're going to be the man. Teams are going to scheme against you, knowing you're going to be the man, and had that kind of success. And I just think the drop off that we saw with him last year in some of those scenarios was just the quality of the play he got up front in front of him. I think we can all agree with that. Once Frank left and Taylor was dealing with something, it just wasn't the same offensive line. And so if they can fix some of that part, I have a lot of confidence from what Jahmyr showed me at the end of 2024 to think that he can go into this season and be a 20-25 carry guy. And maybe there's some other weeks where that's not the case and you give Pacheco a little bit more or you're more pass oriented. But I think Jahmyr can handle that load. He's got those young legs, guys. You guys know about that. We haven't seen those in a while, but he's got those young legs and he can run away from people. He doesn't take a lot of big hits. And so I think he's going to be able to handle what the Lions have in store for him this year.
Yeah, I don't need to dig into it. I've got it here, but not to quibble. The point you're making is right, Tim, and the guy is looking for more. He's still young, too. Let's not forget about that. He's got a lot of runway ahead of him as far as that goes.
Okay, so that's another very valuable point. Glover brings up the fact that Gibbs now has the keys, and what he means by that is like you're the leader of this group now. Like this is your room, and you are it. So you don't no longer have the 50-50, 60-40 split or 70, 5-25, whatever the split is. It's 100% on you until they decide to put Pacheco in. So if you're getting 25 carries a game, my worry with that, and I don't think the Lions are going to do that, is now you're putting your running back into harm's way. They were extremely smart by splitting the backfield up the way that they did. That gave more mileage to Jahmyr Gibbs. It gave more mileage to the other, like David Montgomery. And I get it. Maybe David Montgomery did not appreciate that enough because now he wants to go out and be a lead back somewhere else. But man, dude, you were extending your career by splitting carries with Jahmyr Gibbs in a very dynamic offense. So maybe it was a mistake for Montgomery, maybe to, want to look at greener pastures, if that was the case, which, I mean, he'll definitively say it wasn't. But for the Lions, they need to figure out that same style of balance, right? They need to be balanced, not as just an offense, but balanced with their running backs. I don't want to see Jahmyr Gibbs going into these games getting 20 touches. I don't. Like, you could put him out there for 30 plays, 35 plays, or, I just don't want to see him getting 20, 25 touches a game in, game out. Looking back at, did he say 2024? Because if he said 2024, the last 4 or 5 games, like, Gibbs nowhere close to 100 yards a game, like nowhere close. It was 43, 38, 2, 41, and 80. But maybe in the past game, he was a little bit better. Finished the year with 1,412 yards, though. Carry-wise, he had 19, 17, 7, 13, 12, 20, 15, 13, 15, 9. So when you add it all up and you take the attempts that he had in just about every year, I mean, the last 2 seasons, he's averaged about 245 attempts. So 245 divided by, 17. Yeah, it's about 14 carries a game. I think that's right where he needs to be. But I think now that's probably going to creep up somewhere between 18 and 22 carries a game. And that's not a bad thing. But at the same time, it's a bad thing because he's going to be exposed to more hits. He's going to be exposed to more injury. And I think the last thing that we want is a Jahmyr Gibbs injury. And you know what? It can happen at 10 touches a game. But the more you're exposed, the more it can happen.
Tim, I just want to shift gears a little bit and ask you about some guys that are still left unsigned and what you think may happen with them. A guy like Marcus Davenport, Avonte Maddox, Tristan Colon, DJ Reader, guys like that who have experience looking the part of the program, maybe can extend some of the depth you've been talking about. What are your thoughts on any of those guys coming back and where any of that stands?
Yeah, I think the Marcus Davenport ship has probably sailed at this point. Just with, and look, it's not all his fault. Some of that was injuries too, but I just think they're looking to get a little bit more younger, a little bit more reliable in that spot. Of those names, I think Avonte Maddox is a guy that I really thought played well last year. A guy that can play some corner for you, that can play some safety. Glover knows how hard that is to try to do both. That's how he started and finished his career. And so he's got some versatility to his game. He's won a Super Bowl in this league. He knows what winning is. And I thought he stepped in and did a pretty good job when they needed to at the end of the season. I'm curious what Glow thinks about Avonte and maybe his fit here, because I thought that was a good one for a number 3, number 4 backup cornerback safety to have that kind of versatility and experience. I thought that was pretty important last year, Glove.
Yeah, I thought Avonte played well. I mean, I liked him when he was in Philly, and then for him to come over in Detroit and some of the things he did, I mean, I thought he was fine. And like you say, anytime you can have that guy that can play corner, play safety, most of the time he can kick in and play the nickel as well. I mean, those guys are invaluable because you're getting special teams from that guy as well. I mean, they're actually taking up 4 spots for you on game day roster. So anytime you can get those guys that can play and play at a high level, and like you say, he got Super Bowl experience. He's been around it. He's done it. So yeah, I definitely think he's definitely a guy that they can bring him back. It would definitely be helpful.
And I think DJ Reader is maybe a guy that's probably a second, third wave of free agency type guy, just where he is in his career, and he's going to be he's really going to take his time and make sure he makes the right move at this point. I know he said publicly he would like to come back here. I think the Lions want Tyleik Williams to kind of step into that role. That's why they drafted him in the first round, and it's kind of like that transition of the roster that we talked about earlier, right? Some of those young guys have to step in and fill some of those roles. And some guys, it's earlier than others when you're first round pick. Well, guess what? In this league, it doesn't wait for anybody, and you've got to step in and and fill those roles. And so with Levi Onwuzurike coming back, I know that Lions fans might roll their eyes a little bit, but if you go back to 2024 with Levi, he was second on this team in quarterback pressures. I thought he played great on a contract year. Unfortunately, he had the ACL in the offseason, and he didn't play last year. But if he can come back to being anything like 2024, Levi Onwuzurike, again on a contract year, then I like where they're at is if he's your number 3, defensive tackle, with a Liam McNeil in there. But I think there's a spot for DJ Reader. I think the price has got to be right because they're looking for some of those young guys, I think, especially Tyleek, to kind of step into a bigger role next to Aleem. And obviously Aleem with his contract and his potential is going to have a big role. So I think those are going to be your 2 defensive tackles. Would DJ Reed come back and want to have a lesser role? I think that's part of the equation too, that he's got to kind of go through in his free agency process. So we'll have to see on that. But of that list that you talked about, I think Avonte Maddox is a guy for me in that second, maybe third wave of free agency, depending on what kind of opportunities, he has at other places. I think would be a great guy to come back on, 1-year deal and be that depth that Glover talked about in the second.
Okay, so I guess another alignment here for me and Tim Twentyman. So I'm from the exact same cloth on the DJ Reader deal. Tyleek Williams was brought in to be the replacement. They brought him in a year ahead so that they could, one, it was the right pick last year given the board, and two, it was the right replacement. Someone that is younger, fresher, faster, smoother, bigger, stronger. Reader's a big guy, but Tyleek Williams coming into this season, from the grumblings that I've already heard, is a redefined man. Like, it's going to be exciting to see Tyleek and what he looks like when OTAs pop up. If the rumors that I'm hearing are right, he's totally transformed his body. Now, we'll do it. We'll go take the picture from last year and we'll look at him this year and we'll see how he's changed. But it's from what I understand, he's looking good. And we're not that far away. Like, we're only 7 weeks away or whatever it is from OTAs, and we're going to know in a hurry just what kind of shape these guys are in. The Levi Onwuzurike thing. I said the same exact thing to a degree. Look, the guy was under contract, and there's nothing that you're going to do when it's such a low contract that the contract was actually told, so he had to sign the extension. There's nothing that you're going to do until this player shows you that he can't play, right? So if he can play and he can get back to where he was in 24, what a perfect deal that is for the Lions. Now, will he get an extension and stick around if he has a really good year in 26? Probably not. Like, as much as I think that Brad would want to, I don't see them investing that kind of money in someone that's had this many significant things go on. But right now, he's an extremely cheap option. What about 1.2 million or whatever his contract is? It's not even in the top 51, or it's very close to the bottom of the top 51. You need those guys. Tell me where you're going to find a better defensive tackle right now for $1.2 million. I better make sure that's his contract. I don't think it's any more than that. It's really close to that. Here we go. 1.215. That's his number for the year. His cap hit is 1.215. And if I go look at the Lions cap table, man, he is... Lions have 65 players signed. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So he's kind of right in the middle. Man, we got a lot of guys in that 1 point area. A lot of guys. I mean, from Isaiah Pacheco down, or I'm sorry, Christian Izzian down, his cap hit's 1.9, Pacheco's 1.8, Rakestraw's 1.7, Ratledge is 1.7, Dorsey is 1.7, Scruggs is 1.6, Tesla is 1.5, Rodriguez is 1.4, and wow, Damon Clark or Damone Clark, 1.262. You've got to be kidding me. McCreary is 1.2625. That's vet minimum for those guys. Where's Wonham? Here he is. Wow. $3 million. It's 2.96. Looks like 1.37 base, and I don't know what the guarantee is. But Tyleik Williams, he's only making $3.7 million this year as a former first-round pick from last year, and DJ Reader was, making that $9-10 million range. Maybe a little bit more than that is what he would probably get paid this year. So you're saving, 6.5, 7.5 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. And you have a guy that can play to the level that DJ Reader was playing at. But to Tim Twentyman's point, yeah, if he comes back, after the draft, which is when I would expect that it would happen, we call that the third wave of free agency, is after the draft. First week is that first wave. The second wave is everything after that to the draft. And that third wave is after the draft. Yeah, I think he's third wave. I think Avonte Maddox could be just before the draft or after the draft. And these guys are going to weigh, what options they have, where can they play, the type of money they're going to get. But at the end of the day, I think those guys want to play for a contender. And if that's going to happen, you have to wait and see where some of these teams draft and how they draft and if they're even going to have a need for you. If the Lions go in and end up with Capehart or Peter Woods or McDonald, then yeah, they probably don't bring Reader back, or maybe they do still and bring in that vet as long as it's a cheap deal. So it's the exact right move. And then again, as far as Avonte Maddox goes, yeah, I would like to see him back for that vet presence, but I still would like to see the Lions go out and get a premier safety in this draft. And even if that's, a third round pick, like I still think that that's a better option for the Lions right now than not. I think that they must bring in someone that can play to a high level. And it's tough, like third round picks, fourth round picks, like they're not expected to start, but if they can play in a rotational role and still play to a high level in a rotational role, then I think safeties can do that a little bit easier than defensive tackles. Running backs can do that. Receivers can do that a little bit better than offensive and defensive tackles. But we'll see where that goes. A couple minutes left here.
Gary.
Glove, you have a thought here about anything?
Well, I kind of want to change the subject. We talked a lot about the players.
Fire away.
We talked a lot about the players, and rightfully so. But I want to know kind of what's the feel about like with Dan and with Brad. I mean, we've had sayings that those guys, might. It's not winter. I mean, it's still cold out there, so I mean, we need seat warmers and hand warmers and all those things. But when you look at for me, when I look at the Lions over the last few years, they started out slow with Dan, obviously. And then, boom, they shoot to the top, NFC Championship game, come back the next season, number 1 seed, but you get bounced, first home game. And then you come back last year, you don't even make the playoffs. It's kind of like we started here and then we went up. And now it's kind of like we're slowly – do those guys feel any pressure, like, on this season? Like, we are – do they feel the security to say, hey, we can take our time to continue to like rebuild and this and that? Or is it like kind of like some urgency, like, hey guys, we could be, on the hot seat?
Yeah, no, I think there's some urgency, and I wouldn't use the term rebuild. I would say retool, because you're not, you've got your foundation, you've got your core pieces. You're not building, you're retooling around those guys like we talked about earlier. So, yeah, they were this, and they've got to get to this real quick. And I think both those guys know that, and I think there is pressure. You talked to both those guys after the season, and we asked them what grade they'd give themselves. They said an F. They said it was a fail. It wasn't good enough. And you talked about it. Look, Dan's been here since 2021. So that's 5 years, 2 playoff appearances. You've got to get back to competing for the NFC North. You've got to get back to being a playoff team. You can't go consecutive years once you've reached the pinnacle that you talked about, Glover, in 23 and 24. You can't do this anymore. You can have some blips in the radar with injuries and some of the things that you deal with, but it's got to be this or this. From where the point, from just the point that this football team is at, and some of the young core stars that they have, they view this as an ascending football team, and they have to do, a good job putting pieces around those guys to make sure that they're back competing for the NFC North and they're back in the playoffs, because that's the standard now. And you go a certain number of years under that standard, we all know what happens in this league. And so I don't think there's external pressure. I don't think there's pressure from ownership. I don't think anything like that. I think they've done enough, certainly, to be able to kind of bounce back from last year. But I think there's internal pressure from both those guys that know what the expectation is, what this fan base expects. They were around in 23 and 24 when this thing was rejuvenated and what Ford Field was like. And they understand that. And this is a demanding city that they both live and work in. They certainly understand that too. And so I think there's more internal pressure to live up to the fans and the expectation that they built than anything else.
I just want to touch on one thing, and I want to get back to the FanDuel odds with you on this one, because I brought this up to last week to Glover, Tim, and I just wanted your thoughts. Okay, so in the NFC North, the Lions are the odds-on favorite to win the division. The Packers are second at plus 200. But then you go to the win the NFC, and the Packers are way ahead of the Lions, and they're way ahead of the Lions in Super Bowl odds as well. How do you think the division stacks up, and why do you think overall the odds makers think the Packers are a better bet than the Lions, but not in their own division?
That's kind of
where you land on that.
Yeah, that's really odd, especially when you consider the Lions are playing a last place schedule this year. I mean, you look at some of the things that they avoided, like the NFC West, you get the Arizona instead of those monsters, those are the other 3-headed monsters out there. You play a last place schedule, and I think the Lions are going to benefit from that. I find that a little strange, and I maybe it's just me, but I'm surprised Chicago isn't in the conversation with some of the things that they've done this offseason. I thought they've done a nice job bringing some pieces in. They obviously have a young ascending quarterback and a head coach that led them to a division title and, a playoff win last year. So I'm a little surprised it's Green Bay that we're talking about, not Chicago. I think internally, when I think about it, I think Chicago's the biggest threat to Detroit, getting back to winning a division title, not so much Green Bay. Now, look, Green Bay's a good football team. They've got some good players there, but I just like what Chicago has done, what they're building over there, what Ben's building. Me personally, I look at Chicago as a bigger threat than I do Green Bay.
What say you, G? As far as who's the threat in the division, we'll forget the rest of the NFC, the Super Bowl. Let's just stay in the division. Who do you think is the bigger threat?
I mean, Tim's got it. I think Chicago. Chicago is that guy. I mean, obviously Ben going over and Caleb's been playing great, and Caleb's going to get better and better and better. I mean, he's a talented guy, and they got pieces around him. I'll be interested to see how Minnesota shakes back, though. They got Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
We know what he can do from a quarterback standpoint. I mean, he can have some real weapons around him with Justin Jefferson and the guys. I'd be interested to see, how he rejuvenates that offense. And so I still think it's going to be tough for the Lions to come out of the North. Chicago seems to be getting better. Minnesota's making moves to get better. And the Lions, I'm not going to discredit and say that they're not making moves to get better. It's just, sometimes we want to see the sexy picks, right? I remember a few years ago, back when I was playing, Dallas Cowboys went through several years where they were drafting O-linemen in the first round, and everybody was giving them grief, and then all of a sudden they had the best O-line in the NFL, and what's that guy name? Murray, the running back. What's his name?
DeMarco.
Yeah, you're on it. DeMarco? No.
DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, I was close.
Yeah. DeMarco Murray was leading the league in rushing, and Ezekiel Elliott just. And so it's kind of like sometimes the sexy picks, they're exciting for the fans, but the substance picks is what we need. So I'm leaning on that with the Lions. That, hey, we're not making a lot of sexy moves that everybody know about, but the substance is there, and we got enough, sexy players or superstar players, and we'll leave it at that. But
and I'm gonna leave it at that too. I'm gonna step away here from Believe Network. Great job by the Believe in Lions crew over there on the Believe Network. You can catch them at Believe in Lions on YouTube. or anywhere where you get your podcast. So, great point by Glover Quinn. I've said it myself. And we've talked about the marshmallow. The what do we call that? The marshmallow theory. It's instant gratification versus delayed gratification, right? As fans, first, we want the number one running back. We want the number one edge rusher, the number one wide receiver, the best quarterback. Of course you do, right? Teams want sustained ability to succeed and win. Because without sustaining the ability to succeed and win, there's no butts in seats. There's no $10 popcorns. There's no $12 Coca-Colas, right? There's no $20 beers and $15 hot dogs going down your throats. That's crazy. But I mean, you'll spend $500 going to a game if you eat in the stadium, plus your ticket. So, sustained ability. That doesn't happen by taking the number one quarterback all the time. It doesn't happen by taking the number one overall player at position all the time. He brought up the Dallas Cowboys. I will never forget those drafts. I will never forget those. I remember sitting at Buffalo Wild Wings. This is back when I used to actually go out and do things like that. We were sitting there watching the draft. I think I was with my dad. I might have been with a couple of his friends and their families. And we're watching these drafts happen in, what year was that? What year was that? 13, 14? 11, 12? What year was that? It might have been 12, right around that area. Let me look up. There we go. I'll just go to Pro Football Reference and look at all their drafts real quick. Let's go back to 2010. 11. Okay. So in 2011, they brought in Tyron Smith at pick number 9. And then at pick 110, they brought in the guard David Arkin. They brought in DeMarco Murray at pick 71. And then the next year, they didn't grab an offensive lineman. The next year, in 2013, they brought in Travis Frederick, the center. And then they brought in Zach Martin in 2014, the guard. And then they brought in Chaz Green in 2015 and in the third round at pick 91. Before that, they didn't really do much. But anyway, it was between 2011 and probably 2014 that they were consistently grabbing offensive linemen in the first round. Well, 2013, 2014, they did it. They grabbed the guard and the center in the first round. And in 2012, they actually didn't take an offensive lineman at all. They went all defense. Besides the wide receiver and the tight end, they took really late. The point is, and then they took Tyron Smith in 2011. So out of 4 drafts, 2011, 2013, and 2014, they took 3 first-round picks offensive line. And then it was probably by 2014 that DeMarco Murray was leading the league that year. So I'll never forget those drafts where everyone is scratching their head like, what the hell are they doing? We knew what they were doing. They wanted to run the damn football. They wanted to protect their quarterback. Was it Tony Romo back then? I think it was Tony Romo back then. They wanted to protect their quarterback. And that's what they did. And that's why they were able to have a really good offense. And so we kind of saw that same energy to a degree with Brad, but he never really double dipped the same position in the first round. He's gotten a different position with every first round pick. Why did he do that? Because he wanted all-stars painted all over the field, not just one area, right? Because if you got just one area covered, we'll go to the defensive end theory. If you got one area that's covered with really good football players, but you don't have any anywhere else, well, now you're weak in 9 out of 11 positions if you take edge. But instead of just taking edge, if you take an edge and then a linebacker and then a DB and then a safety and then an interior defensive lineman, now you have this diamond shape. I call it the diamond theory. You have this diamond shape where you have extremely good football players all over this diamond. Plucking diamond after diamond after diamond after diamond. Go back to my short from 3 years ago. That's what Brad Holmes did. And it has bared fruit because we've won a lot of football games with that theory. And he'll continue to do it. But now he's getting to the point, in entering his 6th season, 6th draft, where now he might start double dipping. You might finally see another edge come off the board in the first round. You might see an offensive lineman for the first time since Penei Sewell come off the board in the first round. You could see, who else would we take in the first round? Well, Tate Ratledge, he was taken second round. Jamison Williams was taken at the 12th pick, right? I know we've gone through this a few times too. This will be like the last thing we talk about. So last year we got Tyleik Williams, first round pick, number 28. We have not brought in a first round defensive lineman. We brought in Aiden in 22, but he's on the edge. He's not interior. 21, we brought in Penei Sewell. 22, we brought in Aiden and Jamo. 23, we brought in Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell. 24, we brought in Rakestraw and Terrion Arnold. I'm sorry, we brought in Terrion Arnold, then Rakestraw. 25, it was Tyleik Williams and Tate Ratledge at 1-2. So, that's another thing. I think a lot of people kind of, we've been spoiled a little bit. We had 2 first-round picks in 2022. We had 2 first-round picks in 2023. That's what set this team on fire, is having multiple first-round picks. It's also the exact reason why I said, trade Kirby, get another first-round pick. Trade somebody else, get another first-round pick. If you have the ability to do that, get the player you just replace the player that you just traded, and then get another top-end player. And there's nothing wrong with even getting 2 players at that position if you have the ability to do that and the room for it. Well, then you're almost guaranteed that one of them is probably going to work out. But even first-round picks don't work out. We've seen that many times. So, very good point, man. It's about the substance of the draft. It's about the substance of the free agency. It's about the substance of the roster, the core. Anything beyond that is just bloat if it's not done right. The Lions aren't bloated. They've got a thin cap, but they have all their draft cap minus, 1 pick, but we got multiple day 3 picks, 2 4s, 5s, and 6s, I believe. So, day 2, 3. So the Lions are in good shape. That's it for today. Appreciate you guys joining me here on the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. Hype it when you're done. Leave comments. Nightbot is watching for your comments. He's on a giveaway streak right now, and so he's collecting data. The more comments we get, the more entries you get. So keep pumping the comments in the videos. Pump the comments after the live stream. The chat doesn't really count unless I do a chat giveaway. So keep doing it. Don't forget DetroitFootballJournal.com, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Pressured by Hutchinson.